Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many Indigenous people made up of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. The Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement should remind us of our responsibility to ensure the Dish, the territories in which we live and work, is never emptied, and that we take care of the land and its inhabitants in a way that ensures its future sustainability. So welcome you all, those in person, those viewing online, to this hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of St. Catharines. Everyone present will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. There are two major types of applications to this committee. Applications for consent and severance, where we slice and dice land, and applications for minor variances to municipal zoning bylaws. Evidence may be required to be given under oath if deemed necessary. Please address your comments and questions through the chair, that is me, this evening. Additionally, please maintain respect while communicating with the committee, staff, and other meeting participants to ensure smooth, orderly discussion. Copies of all decisions will be mailed to the applicant and to any other person who appeared before the committee or filed a written request to receive a notice of decision. Pursuant to the More Homes Built Faster Act and in the matter of consent applications, the applicant, the minister, or a specified person or public body who has an interest in the matter has the right to appeal either the decision itself or the conditions of the consent to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of the mailing of the decision. Minor variance decisions may also be appealed. However, they must be made within 20 days of the making of the decision, and the cost of an appeal is $400. So are there any amendments or additions to the agenda?
There have been a few amendments. There have been requests for deferral added to the agenda, and one request was removed for 5 Rusholme, and it will be heard this evening. It's been added back to the agenda. And please note that there is an error in the report for 25 YMCA on page 2. Variance 3 in the chart should state a reduction from 1.2 meters to 1 meter. The variance is correct in the body of the report. It was just in the chart. And that's all the amendments.
Could you repeat that?
Could you repeat that?
The correction, please?
Sorry. It's on page 2 on the chart, variance 3. It should state the reduction from 1.2 meters to 1 meter, as per the notice of hearing.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda this evening? Thank you, Tom. Tom, you had us a little worried. Is there a motion to adopt? May we please have a motion to adopt the minutes of the last meeting? Thank you, Carrie. Does any member of this panel have a conflict of interest in any of the applications to be considered at this hearing or previous hearing if they were not in attendance? I do not. Okay, please. Okay, so Carrie has stated a conflict of interest with 494 Merritt.
And just what type of conflict?
Please. Okay. Are there any requests? Are there any requests for withdrawal or adjournment?
There is a request for an extension to a referral for 4 College Street, which was extended at the last hearing. And Mr. Romanko is here, present somewhere. The extension is to request to extend it to the April 16th hearing. He was on the January hearing, so he was supposed to be back by March.
Hello.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I would respectfully request an extension to my deferral to the April hearing. I've been working with the comments made from the report, and I'm expecting some drawings tomorrow, actually.
Any clarification required from the members of the committee?
You want a motion?
Please.
I move that we extend A8124 to April 16th hearing.
All those in favor of the deferral to the next meeting? Congratulations. See you next meeting.
And then there is a third-party request by McCarthy and Tetro, representatives Costco Wholesale. A letter was received and is included in your comment package, letter dated February 12th, requesting a deferral of the application for 81025 25 YMCA Drive.
Okay, is the individual making this request for deferral present? If you could please come down and take a seat, turn on your mic, tell us who you are, where you live, and what your comments are.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Steve Gammon. I am a senior manager with WSP Urban and Community Planning Team here on behalf of Costco Wholesale Canada Limited and McCarthy Tetro. Costco owns the adjacent parcel at 3 North Service Road. It operates a business center, a retail facility that focuses on business members, and which has been in operation since 2021. Prior to that, the site was a successful warehouse membership club. Costco is respectfully requesting deferral of the application, as noted through the letter submitted February 12th from McCarthy Tetro, signed by Matthew Schuman. Costco's team is reviewing the parking assessment submitted in support of the minor variance, and the requested deferral will allow time to complete this review and for discussion with the applicant to resolve Costco's concerns, ideally. As a member-based retailer, Costco strives to ensure the availability of parking on site, and the proposal to reduce parking on the adjacent parcel and reduce minimum parking space and drive aisle standards raises concerns of overflow parking on the Costco's busy site, hence the request. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much. Are there any questions or clarifications required of the committee? Tom?
Through you to the, not the applicant. How long of deferral are you requesting for? Do you think would be necessary?
Costco didn't specify. I presume to the next committee meeting should be sufficient.
Shall we discuss?
Well, I have a comment, or a question perhaps. These are two independent properties with offering two independent activities. We're responsible for maintaining control over parking on your private property for the people who are supposed to be on that property. With respect to Costco's obligation to maintain their parking lot reserved for their customers, that obligation would seem to me to be required regardless of what's happening on the adjacent property. So is your consideration that since some of these minor variances include reductions in parking and parking lot sizes and so on, having more time to review that, you may, as a concerned party, your client may, as a concerned party, have additional comments?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Is there... Right. Okay, great. Thank you. Is the applicant for this hearing, for this file here? Thank you. We probably should have had you come down first, although we're in the deferral request stage. So at this point, you're coming. Would you like to join us in the conversation and contribute in response to this deferral request? You're welcome to stay right there. In this case, we'll have you sit at the head of the horseshoe, turn on your mic, identify yourselves, and through me, respond to this concern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Franz Kleitbofer, Principal Planner with AJ Clark and Associates. With me today is Mr. Ryan Ferrari, the Senior Planner at our offices. With request to deferral, I completely agree with your comments, Mr. Chair. This is a policing issue. This is not an issue with regard to the minor variance itself. We will be exploring more details in regard to that minor variance. I think you'll note that staff is supportive of the variance as we move forward. I really don't think there's any need to defer this specific issue. We are in keeping with the official plan, the zoning bylaw. We maintain the intent and purpose of both the official plan and the zoning bylaw, and that satisfy the other two tests under Section 45 of the Planning Act. That is agreed upon by our justification. We've provided parking justification as well, and staff and transportation planning are all on the same page as us.
Okay, thank you. With the fullness of that bit of information from both the request for deferral and the applicant, are there any questions that the members of the committee have of either parties for clarification? Is there any? Okay, so thank you so much. If you could actually turn off your mic, please. It engages the camera. So everybody sit put until we make a decision here. Have a seat. So with respect to a motion, if somebody wants to put a motion on the floor and we can discuss it if there's discussion required.
I move that we decline the request for an adjournment.
Okay, so that is the motion is to decline the third-party request for deferral and hear the application this evening. Is there any?
Correct.
Thank you. Is there any internal committee member discussion regarding this before we vote? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Okay, so the deferral has been declined and the application will be heard. Thank you. Thank you. I'll just slide down here. So just a little bit about who we are up here. Right, there is one more deferral. Right, you mentioned that several times. So we do have another deferral for 88.
Yes, we do.
We do.
Yes, 420.
Yeah, get out of here.
Minute 420.
So we had a third item on our list asking for a deferral. That was our application for 88 Martindale. So I'd ask that the applicant, if they're available, to please come down and speak with us.
Whether or not you're hearing them or-
All right. So since 88 Martindale was on our roster this evening, one would think that the applicant would be here this evening. No? 88 Martindale? Okay. So to the committee, we have, you won't be aware of this, but just prior to the meeting, we had a request for deferral from the applicant, who's not here to explain any further, and therefore is not here to participate in the hearing. So our consideration for a motion is to, for this deferral to happen this evening. Deferral this application to a future meeting.
What was the reason for the deferral, given that the recommendations in the technical
I will look
report
to
were approved?
our city staff to fill in some blanks.
Thank you. Through the chair to the members of the public who are here for this item, as well as the committee members. At approximately 4:20 this afternoon, we received an email from the applicant asking to defer this application to the next meeting while I work with staff on reconciling some of the comments and conditions that have been proposed.
Is deferring to the next meeting a realistic timeframe to get everything worked out?
We'll defer. The next meeting would be our proposed deferral date. So a motion from either member.
I move that application B2424 SC, B2524 SC, and A76, 77, and 78, 24 be deferred to the next meeting.
All those in favor of the motion? Okay, that application will be deferred to the next meeting. Thank you. Okay, so a little bit, so that was sort of some pre-meeting housekeeping, a little bit about who we are. So the Committee of Adjustment are community volunteers. We do receive a bit of a stipend for our participation in these meetings. Our terms follow the election cycle, so it's typically 4 years. And we are made aware of these applications about 4 weeks before this meeting. Otherwise, they're relatively fresh to us, and we are a fresh set of eyes on these applications as opposed to the city staff and the applicant who would have probably spent months or years working on these applications for these development proposals. So we are looking at it through our own perspective relative to the Planning Act and the measure to which it requires us to make a determination on severances or minor variances. Carrie?
Did I not see in the various emails that there was a request for a deferral on 5 Rusholme? Or was that?
That was removed later this afternoon, and they will be heard.
Hey, I was on a train of thought here.
It was removed as in the deferral?
Yes, it'll be heard this evening.
Oh, I did not see that part.
Sorry.
Thank you.
As I was saying, so we're looking at this application under that guise. But to support us this evening are various members of city staff planning. There'll be the planners who are probably principally involved in the various applications, and they'll be available to support us with any questions or clarifications that we have, and we can also engage them if we hear questions from the community. We can help frame those and try and get some answers as well. So that is who we are, and this is what we do, and we're going to start with our first application, which is for 25 YMCA Drive. So this application is for the existing, the previous location of the former YMCA building that has been sold by the YMCA, purchased by a new owner, and the new owner is coming to us with respect to a proposal that they have submitted to the city, and that proposal requires some minor variances, 6 in particular. So our focus with this committee is these 6 minor variances as they relate to the 4 tests that we use outlined by the Planning Act to determine whether or not we can approve those. We also have a staff report, a technical report, which includes the various departments' comments on the application. And there's a recommendation in that report, which is hopefully everyone had a chance to read. In that report, variance 1 is recommended to be approved with a slight change, which is outlined on the report. Variances 2, 3, and 4 are proposed by staff to be denied, and variances 5 and 6 are proposed to be approved. So the applicant this evening will have also read this report and will probably be speaking to the staff report with respect to those comments. So at this time, and then after we hear from the applicant, the entourage of applicants, we will invite anybody in the gallery who wishes to speak this application to come down and try and focus. I'll be trying to focus you on these 6 minor variances in particular. The other aspects of this development are beyond our purview. We were given this situation to consider these 6 minor variances. So would somebody from the applicant like to say who you guys are and what your comments are regarding the staff report?
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Chair, thank you. Good evening, Chair, members of committee, staff, members of the public who may be in attendance tonight. Our entourage, my name is Ryan Ferrari. I'm a senior planner at AJ Clark & Associates. I have my colleague Franz Kleiphofer with me as well, who's a principal planner at AJ Clark & Associates. We also have folks from BA Group, Michael and Doug, who are our parking consultants. You'll hear from shortly. We also have the owner, VJ, from Atria Developments as well. So that's our contingent today. We're certainly here to make our case for this application, answer any questions as necessary. Now, I think the first thing I'd just like to note, I provided the committee with a bit of a presentation. Perfect, thank you. Awesome, thank you, Chair. I'll just start right on page 2 there. So really briefly, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the overview of the application. Just really quickly, we're going to discuss the proposed variances and staff's recommendations, but just really quickly want to touch on the background on slide number 3 there, what's being proposed. This is a 4-tower development located in a major commercial area in the official plan. And as the chair did mention, these 4 towers are permitted in the official plan in terms of height and in terms of the zoning bylaw. These uses are permitted. And what we're discussing with the committee today and what we're asking for are actually 6 variances, which I believe I put on the next slide here on slide number 4. Oh, just some more details. There is ground floor commercial proposed, 1902 residential units. All this is permitted. In addition, I just want to note there's a significant amount of short-term and long-term bicycle parking proposed on this site as well. Next slide, please. Like I said to the committee, we're requesting 6 variances, and really what they relate to, 2 relate to bicycle parking and their location. The other 4 relate to parking in general. So with the next slide, one of the variances we're requesting is for a parking ratio of 0.85 spaces per unit, whereas 1 space is required. The way that staff wrote this into their report, which we're in agreement with, is that this will translate into a 0.75 ratio for the residential component and a 0.1 ratio for the visitor component. And staff are supportive of this variance. And part of the reason why they're supportive, if we go to the next slide here, there is policies in the official plan which staff have reviewed in their report, and they concur with our request to reduce the parking for this area because of where it's located. And I won't go through the spiel of the policy, it's in the staff report, but the next slide just shows some of the planned active transportation proposed surrounding the site. That just shows the cycling network and proposed active transportation network nearby the site. And next, the committee should be aware that Niagara Transit is proposing some new plans. What we just highlighted here, number 4, that's close to that's the Fairview Mall site, which is across the street. And those blue and white dotted lines are proposed rapid routes. And what that generally means, just means that bus service to be frequent more than 10 minutes or quicker during rush hour. And really what that means is that adjacent to our site is we already have a bus terminal of sorts, and through our site plan application process, we're going to be adding more as well. So that's the parking variance, and it's the variance that staff support. Really quickly on the next slide, I grouped the bicycle variances together. The bicycle variances just relate to the location of the bicycle parking. We can't locate it all on the ground floor because there's so many spaces. And the other one relates to the bike parking space, which is an OEM manufacturer type of space, and that's why we need the variance. So I think with that, those are the variances that staff are supportive, and I'll pass it to Michael and Doug to discuss specifically the parking variances related to our actual parking spaces.
Next slide, please. Hi, again, my name is Doug Hall. I'm with BA Group, and we're the parking consultants for the applicant. I'd just like to provide a little bit of background info on the request for the parking dimension variances. The original site plan for this site was made in 2021, so about 4 years ago. And at that time, the parking layout that accompanied that application was based on the then current zoning bylaw parking requirements, with one exception, and that had to do with the obstructions, and the plan dealt with that by creating openings between the columns so that doors weren't obstructed, and I'll talk about that in a minute. In April of 2024, city staff recommended changes to council to make changes to the parking dimensions. So 3 years after our application had been made, to reduce the width of a drive aisle, increase the width of a parking space, and increase the length of a parking space, and bring some criteria to the placement of columns or adjacent to parking spaces so that they're not obstructed, so people can open their doors. In the report to council, staff stated that the changes were made in response to formally incorporating a driveway dimension into the zoning bylaw. Previously, it had been adjudicated through the site plan process, so they wanted to bring it into the bylaw so that it could be adjudicated that way. But at the same time, they addressed requests from developers to reduce the width of the drive aisle in order to reduce the structural spans. And in order to compensate for that, they increased the width of the parking space and the length of the parking space. They also noted that there had been an increase in vehicle sizes over the last 10 years. Unfortunately, the results of those changes to our application that had been in for 3 years put it in non-compliance with respect to the new parking dimensions. So the variance that we're requesting today will help put it back in compliance with the bylaw and create a condition that's meets the intent, in our opinion, of the new bylaw parking dimensions with respect to the functionality of the parking spaces, the ability for someone to park and unpark their car, but also maintain the efficiency of the original layout that's now going on 4 years old as part of the application. Can I go to the next slide, please? Oh boy, that's going to be hard for a lot of people to see. I hope you can see that on your screen. Oh, thanks. This slide is just showing a comparison of the current zoning bylaw condition on the left and the proposed condition on the right with the same parking layout. And it's hard to tell green and yellow on that slide, but the key differences are the width of the drive aisle, which is 6 meters in the current condition, in the zoning bylaw condition. We've increased it to 6.8. The ability for a car to park in a parking space is determined by a couple of things primarily. That's the width of the drive aisle that the vehicle is turning from, and the width of the parking space that the vehicle is driving into or backing into. They work together. Drive aisle width and parking space width work together. And so the current condition, the zoning bylaw condition, has a narrower drive aisle and a wider parking space. We're proposing a wider drive aisle with the previous parking space width of 2.6 meters, so from 2.75 to 2.6, but the drive aisle goes from 6 meters to 6.8 because we're able to push the columns back. The architects have confirmed that the structural issues that are not an issue in this case with making that span work. And so so effectively we've created a parking situation that is equivalent in our opinion. Next slide, please. This slide, again, zoning bylaw dimensions on the right, proposed on the left, proposed on the right. It shows a variety of sizes of vehicle types and parked. A typical sedan, a medium-sized SUV, and a larger passenger vehicle akin to a Dodge Caravan or a Toyota Sienna. And it's, again, hard to tell from the slide, but we're showing the positions of the vehicles so that to illustrate that it's possible for the doors to open when your vehicle is parked. One of the key components that's similar, that it's the same in both conditions, is the width between the front column or the column that's adjacent to the drive aisle and the column that's adjacent to the back of the stall. That opening of 3.2 meters is exactly the same in the zoning bylaw requirement and in our proposed requirement. We want it to be the same because we want people to be able to open their doors, obviously. Next slide, please. The next series of diagrams are what we call vehicle maneuver diagrams. They are computer simulations of the turning movements of a vehicle. But it's based on field surveys that we do. We actually take these vehicles out, we turn them around, we measure their turning diameters and turning radii, and we then create these simulated diagrams, really just for comparison purposes. So this, again, we're always going with the bigger vehicle, the larger vehicle, the Dodge Caravan in these diagrams. In the one on the left, the zoning bylaw parking requirements, again, it's hard to tell, but the vehicle driving in makes a correction. So it turns towards the parking space, backs up, and then drives in. Same thing in the proposed condition. So the effect of driving condition is the same for the driver. Next slide, please. This is the same vehicle, but it's backing in now. And many people probably find that if you drive a larger vehicle, you often will, or you'll see people back into their parking space because it's an easier thing to do with a larger vehicle. Most of the maneuvering area, the swing is out in the drive aisle where you've got lots of room, and you're backing in straight into the parking space, which is narrower. The condition in the zoning bylaw condition and the proposed condition is exactly the same in terms of the ability for the driver to make that turn. In fact, it might be a little bit easier in the proposed condition because we've set the columns back from the edge of the drive aisle. There's less of an obstruction for the vehicle while it's turning. Next slide, please. This is the vehicle now that had backed in. It's now driving out, and you can see that it's a fairly simple maneuver in both cases, pulling out of the zoning bylaw parking space or out of the proposed parking space. And next slide, please. This is the more difficult one in both cases because this is the person with the large vehicle who actually drove into the parking space forward, and now they got to back out. And that is a harder maneuver. And in both cases, it takes two corrections. So the person backs up across the drive aisle, pulls forward, backs up, pulls forward, and then drives away. That's a condition that exists for both the zoning bylaw parking spaces and in the proposed parking space. So I'm trying to illustrate that they're comparable in terms of the effort that's required by the driver to park or unpark the vehicle. Next slide, please. I always find it, looking at plans with vehicles on them is fun, but real life is always interesting too. And so I've taken the next few slides are just shots of vehicles parked in real underground parking garage with similar parking dimensions. Not similar, the same parking dimensions that we're proposing. Could we just go to the first slide, please? I know one of the concerns that staff had was the ability for someone to, after their vehicle was parked, can they pass between the vehicle and the column to get to their door? This handsome young man is actually my son, but he's 6'3" and 220 pounds, and he can. I'm trying to demonstrate that the opening when the vehicle's parked, that a large person can certainly pass between the two. Yes, you have to turn sideways. We probably all do it not even thinking about it when we park in a parking garage. Next slide, please. As the vehicles, again, that was a very large vehicle. The Jeep is 2 meters wide. It represents the upper end of passenger vehicles in terms of width. This is a medium-sized vehicle. If it's a Ford Escape, again, there's more room now. You can see to more easily pass between the column and the vehicle. Next slide, please. Typical sedan becomes even easier. In fact, as cars get shorter, you don't even have to pass between the column. The cars actually park behind the column. Next slide, please. I'm showing this slide as an illustration of someone who parked a larger vehicle, a Grand Caravan, and made the decision to park it on a bit of an angle. They intentionally parked it closer to the column so that there's a bit more space on the driver's side to get out and walk. So people adapt. They park in a way that makes sense for them to enter and exit their vehicle. Next slide, please. And we do see pickup trucks in parking garages, even residential garages now and again. So again, I just wanted everybody to see that it's possible to park a pickup truck in a parking space of this size. And there it is, and the drivers, you can get to the passenger and the driver's door. Okay, I'd just like to, in summary, I hope I'm not running out too much time here. I'll go quick. I just want to say that the proposed condition isn't new. There are thousands and thousands of parking spaces that have been constructed to the condition that we're proposing in other municipalities in Toronto over the last 20 years, with the column setback and the opening and the drive aisle width and parking space width. In fact, we've set the columns back. We actually have a better condition than most of those parking spaces that have been constructed. The Canadian sales data over the last 10 years, it's something we monitor very closely every year. Vehicles are getting a little bigger over time. Over the last 10 years, the average width of a passenger vehicle has increased by 4 centimeters, so about 1.5 inches. And the 95th percentile width, so that's the vehicles at the upper end of that category, the larger vehicles in the passenger vehicle category, the big SUVs and that sort of thing. They've increased over the last 10 years by only 2 centimeters. So yes, there's been a bit of an increase, but it's not 15 centimeters. And we think that these parking spaces, as we can see, are still quite capable of accommodating those vehicles. The other thing I'd like to say is that the proposed parking layout, which is the original parking layout, uses 6% less area per space than the zoning bylaw parking space. And that's important. 6% means 6% more floor area means 6% more construction costs, which means 6% more onto the price tag for the end user. As we all know, there's no such thing as free parking. The other thing about a larger parking space is that it uses more material, so it's less friendly to the environment and the carbon footprint. These things are always made, garages are always made from reinforced concrete, which has a large carbon footprint. So this more efficient layout, which was our original layout, helps to reduce the cost and that impact to the environment. We also think in this particular case, because this is a multi-residential building in an urban setting, with what we'd call a low parking turnover. Residential uses are considered to be low parking turnovers. In other words, cars don't get parked, they get parked once a day or unparked once or twice a day. As compared to a shopping center, where you often typically see wider parking spaces because the parking space turns over many times. There's many people, many different people that aren't familiar with the facility, parking and unparking their vehicles. Sometimes they have shopping carts, et cetera, and so those tend to be wider. Low turnover parking spaces can be narrower, and in this case, we think adopting the original width is appropriate. And the final thing, and I'll stop talking, is the first 2 phases of this building, and perhaps more of additional phases, are planned to be rental tenure. And what that means is that it provides a lot of flexibility to building management to assign, and if necessary, reassign a parking space to one of their tenants. If the Ford pickup truck there happened to park beside another guy with a Ford pickup truck, that might be a bit tight, but they could easily move to another location, especially in a rental environment. So with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'll stop.
And thank you for your levity, Mr. Chair. Just really quickly to wrap up, just for the context of the committee, we have submitted a site plan application back in 2021 for this development. These variances are to facilitate, the development you see before you. And I just think it's important to note for the committee, because we submitted a site plan application, that means we're zoning compliant except for these 6 things that we've asked this committee for today. And I just really didn't want to understate that. These variances will facilitate and allow us to continue on with our site plan application. We've read, of course, the staff report and the letters received from residents. Matters, landscaping, building height, design, things like that. Those are all matters we work with on staff, and we'll continue to work with staff after this process. This is just one step. So I just think that was important context for the committee. And sort of with that, our team is here. We're more than happy to field any questions from the committee or any residents as they come along. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time.
All right, thank you so much. Immediately, are there any questions among the committee members to the applicants? Okay, currently is good. At this point, I would like to invite one at a time, if there are any people in the gallery who wish to speak to this application, to come down to the head of the horseshoe here, turn on the microphone, state your name and address, and engage us in conversation.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of committee, staff, members of the public, and the applicant. I am here as a concerned resident. I live in the north end of St. Catharines, but I do frequent this area on a regular basis. I have a number of concerns with the reduction in parking. Not as fussed with the aisle width at the parking stall and the biking issues, other than to say we do have an inordinate number of pickup trucks in St. Catharines. I swear every third driveway has a pickup truck. It may be because we're a lakeside community and people have boats and the like, but that is a big consideration the city should have regard to with respect to reducing the dimensions, the performance standards of the parking spaces. I am a retired municipal planner and a senior planning consultant from a Toronto-based firm. I've also served on 2 committee of adjustments, so I'm very familiar with the 4 tests. I will say, and the director of planning knows this, I was very concerned when I saw the committee of adjustment application that a project of this scale, density, and magnitude has not triggered the need for an official plan amendment, even for density, and that even a zoning bylaw to deal with the site-specific, the site plan application was not required. I understand why planning has made that decision. The official plan, in my opinion, is very much lacking in policies, but that's something for another day. I know there will be an update done shortly. I'm not going to talk to you about the proposal. Everybody seems to be aware of what's being proposed, the heights of the buildings, the densities. It is a very high density for a city, the city of St. Catharines. It's a mid-sized community. It's exciting to get new projects. I've never been someone terribly fussed with height, but it has to fit the context. What I'm going to speak to, though, are the variances. Now, what's interesting about this project is it's being called a mixed-use project. And as the committee knows, if this were strictly a residential building, the parking rate would be coming in at 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit. By virtue of providing what I consider a token amount of commercial, the applicant is already deriving a benefit of having to provide 475 fewer parking spaces by virtue of providing commercial space that's less than 1% of the overall floor area of this GFA of this project. You know, that's an issue. It's not what I consider a traditional mixed-use project where you would have like a Fairview Mall, where you'd have grocery stores and a fair component of the project actually devoted to commercial. And those types of projects in other municipalities, they do a mixed-use parking calculation, and it blends the 2 uses that have different peak usage requirements, and they tailor the parking accordingly. So what I'm saying is already 475 parking spaces are allowed as of right as a reduction from the standard apartment parking rate by virtue of 0.87% of the project's density being devoted to something other than residential. Now we're asking for 278 more spaces. To me, that's 753 spaces that otherwise would have been required had there not been this minuscule amount of commercial on the site. Bike parking, yes. Bike parking will take the load off the need for some parking, but as you all know, it's weather dependent. We've had a very strange winter this year, and it also depends on the destination that residents are going to be going to, where they're going to be biking, the purpose of their trip. So I agree that it does have an impact on helping to reduce the parking requirement, but again, it is limited in some respects. I haven't seen any indication of any car sharing spaces being provided within the project, which is something you'll see in larger urban municipalities. You know, there might be 5 or 6 spaces allocated per tower for car share, which helps to sort of let people share the need of a vehicle. The other thing I think is important that the committee needs to turn their mind to is the unit composition. These are not 4 towers consisting of studio, 1 bedroom, and necessarily 2-bedroom apartments. There are a number of 3-bedroom. There are a number of 2-bedroom plus den. There's also 2-bedroom. That's great, nice to provide a mix. But even the city of Oshawa, as noted in the plan, in the parking assessment, they take into account the number of bedrooms in an apartment unit when determining parking need. It's logical to me, and based on my planning experience, typically a 3-bedroom apartment does generate more demand for parking, typically 2 cars, than let's say a studio apartment might. It's just the number of residents that are accommodated in the building. The other point I wanted to make is we've heard today about the possible potential planned tenure of the 4 towers, but there's no mechanism to secure that, to say we know we're going to have a rental in built Tower 1 and Tower 2. We don't know what the tenure is, and that's important because if it's seniors, there might be a lesser need for parking. If it was rental, it might be different as well, and the price point of what the units are may come into play as well. Economic hardship for the developer, I understand, you know, development is a business. You don't want to be losing your shirt on a project, but as I said, they're already getting a relief of over 470 parking spaces by virtue of providing just a minute amount of commercial space. In Tower 1, it's like putting a tuck shop in an apartment building. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the varied residential parking rate. So Tower 1 has more parking, is proposed to have more parking than the bylaw requires. Towers 2, 3, and 4 don't. So Tower 1's going to be built, and there's not going to be a parking problem because they exceed the bylaw. But parking is then going to be reallocated down the line to the subsequent towers. I need a drink of water, sorry. And the problem's not going to be realized if there's a shortfall of parking until a later stage, and the city will have no recourse. And I don't mean to be cheeky, but the OP says the city can entertain reducing parking, but there shall not be spillover parking onto other properties. If I was Costco, I'd be very concerned because this developer doesn't provide sufficient parking down the road. It shouldn't become their headache. They shouldn't have to hire people to do enforcement. That's adverse impact on an abutting landowner. So I think that I'm quite happy that Costco is here and concerned that they may be able to eliminate their concerns, but adverse impact is one of your tests. And if residents start parking on Costco's property, that is adverse impact. So we talked about the need to assess trucks. I think that's something that the parking assessment didn't do at length. And in my opinion, the reduction in parking fails the tests of being minor. It's not desirable for the proper use of the land, and it defends the official plan policy that clearly says parking reductions should not result in spillover parking onto other properties. I feel very strongly about this. I don't live next door, but I'm a planner. I want to see this community planned properly.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Would you also recognize possibly that there's a bit of a risk if this development provides a hardship for future tenants and so on, that they can't actually park their cars on site, and therefore it makes it less desirable? I mean, there's the other side to not being convenient with parking. By reducing parking is all of a sudden your unit becomes a little less desirable than a unit that provides 2 parking stalls for their tenants and that sort of thing. So there's a bit of a trade-off with respect to a developer, I suppose, choosing to reduce parking when that seems to be all anyone ever thinks about is where they're going to park their car. So there is that. I mean, I assume that this decision is made with that in mind.
Well, having worked as a senior planner in a firm in Toronto and myself been the planner for high-rise developments, typically, I must say, on subway routes, or in Mississauga, along here, Ontario, along the LRT, where you've got infrastructure, and there's a certain level of expectation people don't have private vehicles. We're not living in those types of cities in St. Catharines.
But we strive to
I
create those, we
understand.
strive to
want
create those
people-
types of cities.
We want to get them out of their cars, we want to get them on transit, we want them on buses. Is it a reality at this stage of the game? I don't know. But I don't believe, the developers are famous for saying, well, that's my marketing problem, isn't it, down the road? But that doesn't matter. It still has the potential, and I think there's a strong potential for spillover parking onto abutting properties, and that enforcement headache should not be their burden.
So in this case, we have a staff report, which staff is recommending denial of variances 2, 3, and 4. They're recommending a rewording of variance 1 and approval of variance 5 and 6. So your comments would be, I suppose, you support staff's denial of variance 2, 3, and 4, which relate to generally with the parking size. And your concerns, do you have concerns with staff's recommendation for support of the bicycle parking space variances?
I am no expert on talking to you about bike space dimensions. I do know I've written zoning bylaws for the city of Mississauga in the past when I was a staff member there. I understand how parking spaces function. I've actually worked with BA Group a lot in my past. But I don't want to weigh in on those. I'm not fussed about those. I'm not saying I think it's good, bad, or otherwise. I'm really concerned about the on-site parking.
And then I'm going to ask staff to confirm one of your other comments, the application of the parking ratio across the entire development, and how Tower 1 right now appears to have a higher ratio of parking within its garage relative to the units. If it was only built first, there would be a disproportionate amount of parking if the whole development didn't happen at the same time. Is there any consideration about, is there confirmation then, please, that of the total number of the dwelling units and commercial space, that the total number of parking spots represent this ratio applied across the property?
To answer your question, Mr. Chair, the first tower will be oversupplied in the nature that all of the underground parking will be constructed at the very beginning of the project. However, once we see the full build out of the 4 towers, it would be the 0.85 ratio per residential unit that would be applicable as divided as recommended in the report, with 0.75 for residents and 0.1 for visitors.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the members of the committee to the speaker? Any clarifications? Is there anything in particular that the applicants wish to comment on relative to the speaker's concerns?
Through the chair, Michael Giulianardo, I'm with BA Consulting Group. Just to some of the points I was going to make, you kind of they've been pointed out already in terms of the risk to the applicant that was pointed out by you, Mr. Chair. But a couple other things. So we view this local area in terms of the land uses that are there already. I know it was brought up through the chair about the mixed use nature of the actual development itself, but this is an area with commercial land uses, and we view the proposed development that is admittedly quite residential in nature as complementary to the local area. Residents of these 4 towers are going to have places to walk to do groceries, to entertain themselves, to exercise, all sorts of things like that. And so that's something that we consider to be complementary, and it's a great location in terms of proposing a reduced parking ratio on that basis. Another thing to think about in terms of the phasing of the project, that I know that's been addressed, but one other thing to think about is the slides that were up about public transit planning and active transportation planning. These are things that are going to come online over the years, and I think they match the phase nature of the development, where the first phase is higher parking supply, and then it kind of goes lower and lower as the phases advance. I think through the chair, another thing that was brought up was other places that have kind of higher order transit, Toronto, Mississauga, and places like that. Toronto eliminated parking minimums. There is no parking that's required for development in Toronto. Mississauga along the Huron-Ontario corridor a couple years ago went down to 0.5 parking spaces per unit, and now they've went to 0 because of provincial legislation. We're not proposing parking rates that are that low. We're proposing something that we feel is appropriate for this site, which is 0.75 resident parking spaces per unit, which means something like 3/4 of the units will have parking, and 0.1 visitor parking spaces per unit. And I just want to reiterate as well that in determining the parking supply for this development, I think a lot of cues were taken. I know it's been mentioned by Ryan in his presentation, but a lot of cues were taken from the city policy itself. And we view the proposed parking supply as consistent.
Great, thanks so much. So thanks. Do you have a final summary of comments?
Am I allowed to ask a question of the applicant?
Through me.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Would you agree, I'm sorry, gentleman from BA, that the developer is already benefiting from a 475 fewer car park spaces by virtue of providing this as a mixed-use project versus a solely, planners, I should say, apartment?
Through you, Chair. That's the way the bylaw is written. The bylaw is written such that residential uses by themselves have to do 1.25. If you provide mixed use, it's less. So we can't be evaluated or punished by the fact that we've been provided with commercial use on the ground floor. We're just following the bylaw and we're asking for a reduction from that. So I think, frankly, Mr. Chair, to characterize it as if we're getting a reduction from 1.25 down to what we're asking for is not the correct, and it's actually not the variance that was on the notice, and not the variance we're requesting this committee.
Noted, thank you. So yeah, they are obliged to meet the minimum requirements of the current zoning bylaw, and that's why we're seeing these variances over other variances with respect to ratio of commercial space to residential space. So they're not here for that. So thank you. So if there's anybody else in the gallery who wishes to speak to this application and contribute to the conversation we've already had, I'd invite you to come down and take a seat.
Thank you.
Actually, we didn't get your name. Have you provided a written correspondence to this application already?
I was going to, but I decided I would speak instead. And
You're welcome to submit what you've written.
I'm cousin to Elaine Monroe. I'm Carol Ann Monroe. I'm only teasing. Carol Ann Monroe. I don't know if you need my address.
If you want to receive
I would like notice. Thanks.
Okay. You can.
Yeah,
give
I can provide that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
If there's anybody else who wishes to add to the conversation this evening, this is your time. Ideally, we won't recap the points that we've already made and discussed. We will add on to those other concerns that you have which weren't discussed. So turn on your microphone, tell us your name and address, and please share in our conversation.
Okay. Oh, my name is Phil Baranowski. I live in the city of St. Catharines. I live up at the north end. I submitted a letter, and we're representing the Help Save the St. Catharines Walker facility. And basically, I'm more here to ask some questions. I've been familiar with being in this place. For 22 years, I was on the Property Standards Committee for the city. I've been on numerous city committees. But we had seen the renderings of the photos and of the original building, and it was 3 towers, and I think highest one was 49 stories. Now, our committee basically was for trying to save the Y. We're still working with City Council on that, and there's a whole issue. And Hans, the owner of the corporation, Tree, I've talked to him. A bunch of us have talked to him, and we're hoping we can get our community center back because we're shortage of swimming pools in St. Catharines. We should be on number 3 being built, and we're down to 1 because the Y was always considered.
If I could just focus you on the six minor variances.
I'm just giving you some background information because a couple of the things that we're concerned about. We've got into this issue now and about we don't know what's going to happen with the Y presently, the building and all that. But the thing is, a lot of our people on our committee were rather upset about the parking on this whole issue. I mean, a lot of us travel in this area. I've like to know, basically, how many floors of underground parking are there? Originally, when we saw the specs and the renderings, there was no surface parking. Like, in other words, so do the visitors have to park underground? Where is the surface parking? Like the landmass.
Okay, well, we'll answer your questions as you bring them up.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
So, is there a drawing that we could bring up on the screen?
Like how many surface parking?
Okay, great, understood. I'm reiterating the question.
Yeah, okay.
So relative to the proposed plan, is it all underground parking or is there some component of surface parking?
Through you, Chair, it's underground parking, no surface parking.
So, like, oh, thank you, because that's like the original document. The renderings that we saw, there's no...
So here's an image on the screen which shows the proposed layout for parking. There's a second level at least. And look at that, there's a third level. Is there a fourth level? There is not. So there's 3 levels of underground parking, no surface parking.
Okay. Now, is this going to be one garage underground to service all 4 units?
Right,
or is it going to be individual for...
You can see right here on the screen that there is common aisleways extending from east to west, north to south. So it looks like one great big parking area, unless there's, so this drawing here is an indication of what's being proposed.
Now, even commercial, there's supposed to be 1 floor of commercial that we understand.
So the
Is
parking,
there going to be parking for...
I'm trying to, so parking obviously is a prime concern to people, although I hate cars personally. But parking in this case is a numbers game. And the numbers here are determined by ratios of residential units and commercial spaces that yield numbers. So we have the numbers that we talked about with the previous speaker. So the numbers are relative to the reductions being requested in variance number 1.
Okay. Now, according that we've had different people on our committee, they did some quick calculations because we had a problem here on Geneva and Scott Street about having reduction in parking. And it went down from 1.25 to 1.18 or 1.15 anyway, and it affected this. But I want to confirm, are there going to be 1,902 units in this complex?
I would like to invite the applicant to answer your question.
That is the case right now, sir, yes.
Okay, so if we take 1,902 units using the 1.18 amount, okay, that's 2,244 parking spots that are required on that site.
Well, in this case,
I know we've got a
it's
problem with the commercial.
in this zone, as I understand it, and I can be corrected, it's 1 space per residential unit. So 1.85 is not even a zoning requirement in this on this
because
property.
of using the commercial. Because originally there wasn't going to be commercial when we saw the rendering.
Well, would it be fair of you for me to summarize that you're concerned about the fact that there's going to be reduced parking?
Right, because we figured too, it's about 628 parking spots that are not available. And then if you figure even 1,902 units, there should be at least 1,902 parking spots. This is St. Catharines, where a lot of people, if you check the driveways, there's a lot of 2-car vehicles.
But not my driveway. There's one
It might
car
be
for
your-
3 adults.
Yes, and some.
So I would like to point out that because we have a zoning department and planning, and they are planning for the future, not to maintain our necessarily maintain our reliance on the things that we've had enjoyed when fuel was cheap and plentiful, and the environment wasn't as poisonous as it is right now. This is a situation where this applicant is responding to current planning requirements, of which one of the items they're asking for reduction on is a parking reduction. And in other zones in St. Catharines, downtown St. Catharines, in the core, there's 0 parking. So there's an 18-story apartment building being built with no recognized parking. That person could be taking a chance, or they could be on to the future of increasing densification and the services that support the people who do not have cars. So
I'm familiar with
part
that.
of a larger.
I was on the Parking Advisory Committee.
Great.
I know the zone where there's no requirement. We've got a big tower downtown right by the parking garage, and same thing. But here is a little different in the north end, and when we've got a lot of land, like the General Motors land available. But the other thing too with this parking, I know where you're coming from, but I don't know where you're getting your stats about reduction in vehicles, because I agreed with the planner there too. It depends on how many bedrooms. If you got a studio and you're going to have a 1-car person, if you have
And if the bylaw was written to determine parking based on occupants, that would be what they'd have to agree with. But that is not the measure in this case.
Okay.
The measure is per residential unit.
Okay, see, and the people on our committee were talking about this, everybody. The problem that you're running into, okay, is your height of your building. Because of all this extra units, you have to have more parking on this site, okay? The site is it's not that big for 4 towers. It's not, or the skyscrapers. And apparently, Environmental Canada is starting to come out with concerns about the heights of buildings. It's causing a lot of issues, especially with heat and everything else. And then we've got to put in better sewers,
So in the-
water. But what I'm saying is the height of this building
Yes, but-
that's creating a problem.
Of course it is.
And the
So if they
problem-
want to put more people on here than the parking ratio, so this plan is cheek to jowl of parking over 3 levels. They maximized what they could, and they realized that, they want to have a couple extra stories to get more people living here, and they're asking to get what they want in terms of height, which is not a minor variance consideration this evening, so it's not, we're not looking at the height of the building.
And the people
But
on
yes,
our-
they're trying to put on more people than the cars that they can accommodate. That is exactly what this minor variance is asking for us to consider. Generally speaking, you're sharing the same concerns about the inconvenience of providing the minimum amount of parking that the zoning bylaw requires with respect to spillover and traffic congestion and so on, which is certainly what I would expect you to say, and that will be part of our consideration when considering this minor variance.
I understand that too. I've got a degree in urban environmental studies and urban planning, but my career was always in banking. So I know you want to make a profit and make some money. But what are the latest, okay, for my figures, the cost of each site underground parking, okay, varies from $60,000 to $80,000 a parking spot, okay? Can I ask, to the chair, I'd like to know what Atria is planning to spend per parking spot underground, because they're all underground. There's no surface parking.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, we're not in a position to be speaking
No,
about
yeah.
our portfolio and
Thank you.
costs at this
I'm
point.
just trying to find my way to
Yeah.
allow this speaker to understand that you're off topic with respect.
I understand that, but what I'm
Well,
saying
we
is,
have this is the first of a number of hearing files we have to hear this evening.
You're right.
So out of respect
I
for them, if you have
fully
nothing,
understand
I'd like
that.
you to add something new in terms of concerns as they relate to these 6 minor variances. Otherwise, the point has been made by the previous speaker about parking.
right, okay. Just, then, another issue is safety, okay?
Sorry, the other
I
issue?
want to bring up the safety of this underground parking. Okay. I'd like to know what is in place or in your designs now, because we've never had these towers here in St. Catharines. We've got the shipments, and I'm familiar with that. We've got friends that live there and everything else. What happens, and now we've got to be very careful, okay, of the type of batteries that are in these new vehicles, and they're underground. And the garage isn't high enough for fire engines, and you have to have special spray to put fires out and all that.
Again, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt you because the life safety of any building, I'm an architect, I have to deal with this. The life safety requirements of the design team to provide adequate fire suppression and life safety measures come at the building department, building permit application phase. This is simply, we don't care if it's made of Swiss cheese or at this point, we just care about whether or not how the residents feel about the parking reduction in bicycles as well, although no one seems to care about poor old bicycles. And the applicant's going to be bothered by the fact that the city wants to recommend denial for their parking stall reductions, which is why they spent so long trying to prove to us through those turning radii diagrams, which did not include an F-150 in the diagrams, just showed it in the picture, that they should probably be entitled to, for us to consider approval of what the city's denying. So right now, ain't nobody happy with the staff report in terms of not getting what they want. So the safety of the parking garage is someone else's concern at a later date. It is not a concern for this minor variance application.
Mr. Chair, I would like to be very clear on that point.
Yeah, that's,
Sir,
it's not just for me, it's for.
Sir, I'll be very clear.
Yeah.
We will meet all requirements of the provisions for firefighting in the building code. We will be held to that task by the city.
Okay, and then the other thing is, our city isn't Toronto. We don't have a lot of high buildings.
Respectfully.
Right, and you've got.
You're in Ontario.
Right, and.
You are subject to the
Okay,
Ontario building code.
this is, you're talking directly to one another.
Yeah.
In terms of St. Catharines, we have Towering Heights Boulevard off of Glendale Avenue, where there are a number of what we might consider mid-rise or tall buildings in St. Catharines, mid-rise St. Catharines. But you know, there's a way to accommodate this building type. And St. Catharines is looking at ways to increase intensification and density as per the Planning Act, and this is a vehicle through which to do it, is to stack people on top of one another and not spread out and extend our resources to the brink. So this is where we find ourselves, and the zoning bylaw, the official plan and zoning bylaw is a guide that development is to follow, and to, except for these six particular points, this development has met all the requirements, and they're asking for us to consider these variances. So we're really, I would like you to consider the fact that you've had time to bring up your points, and if you have anything.
You've got my written report.
Yes.
And it's by Uwe.
Yep.
There was two of us that did them. He's out of country. That's why
That would have been
committee's not
that was
here.
given to us as part of our review package in preparation
and I
for
just
this
want
meeting.
safety is an issue, and environmental issue, and I'm just going to be going on and just leaving my words about the fact that tall buildings are not environmentally friendly anymore. It was a big thing. I used to love high buildings, and same thing. So there's a lot of issues about high buildings that are affecting our environmental issues right now. And that's
Okay.
I want to leave it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there, thanks so much, appreciate it. If you could turn off your microphone before you leave, just in case there's no one coming behind you.
Yeah.
And speaking of people coming behind him, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this application? We prefer not to talk about parking anymore because there's nothing more really to say about it. Okay, going once, going twice, then this, that matter is closed for the public portion of commentary. Is there anything that the members of the committee want to have clarified or wish to discuss with the applicant?
Yes. When I look at this file, I see that there's been a meeting of the minds with respect to the minor variance number 1. I believe you said you were in agreement with the modification. There's a meeting of the minds with respect to 5 and 6. You made a presentation, a very detailed presentation on 2 through 4 in terms of the dimensions. I would like to, through the chair, I believe we have somebody from transportation that can comment on the comments that are contained on page 5 and 6 of the technical report. And it starts at the bottom of page 5. In addition, it must be demonstrated that reduced vehicular parking standards will not aggravate the parking supply. And it goes from there through a paragraph where, in staff's opinion, the turning templates do not demonstrate how the reduced vehicular parking standards will not aggravate the parking supply. So I will be quiet now and I will allow some input from staff who are of a different opinion than the consultants for the applicant. Thank you.
Would the appropriate staff member please join our conversation?
Through you, Mr. Chair. My name's Alex Cooper. I'm the planner who wrote the technical recommendation report. I wrote those paragraphs regarding the aggravated parking supply. As detailed in the report, though I appreciate the thorough explanation going through all the different parking sizes at the reduced rate, it is staff's opinion that reducing it will aggravate it for larger sized vehicles. There were some points brought up during the applicant's presentation that at the time in 2021 when they applied for the site plan, the spaces complied with the city zoning bylaw. However, I would like to note that at that time, those columns would have been considered obstructions, and the minimum width for the parking spaces would have had to have been 3 meters, not 2.6. 2.6 would have been if there were no obstructions on either side. And in addition, while I can appreciate that it appears that the drive aisle width is 6.8 meters in width from column to column, we do have to note that the length of a parking stall is required to be 5.6 meters, and 0.4 of that encroaches into the parking stall on either side of the drive aisle. So the drive aisle itself is actually 6 meters for maneuverability, not 6.8, because at that point there would be a slight encroachment into the required parking spaces to access the proposed spaces.
Just for a graphic, we're going to just put on the screen from the applicant's presentation the comparing the proposed versus previous parking or required parking. The drawing, please. Just keep on scrolling toward the beginning. Yep, right direction. Right. Keep going, please. Keep going. I'll tell you when to stop. Number 12. Yeah, there. Great. So what I heard staff, I believe, say was we have a dimension of 6 meters going from face of column to face of column, defining the aisleway in the on the left-hand image, and the other image is measuring 6.8 meters. I don't. My eyes. 6.8 meters from face of column to face of column, but the parking stalls actually extend into the aisleway.
Yeah,
correct?
so through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to go and explain it again because there's a lot of numbers and pictures. You can see the 6.8 meters circled in red there in the image on the right side of the screen.
Yes.
So that is showing column to column, but it is also including 0.4 meters of the parking space on either side. So really that portion is not intended to be used to maneuver into a parking space. And the reality is that the aisle width is still 6 meters. That was the point that I was making.
Clever, thank you.
Thank you.
Is the member satisfied with that discussion?
During the presentation by the applicant, there was several comments about what is acceptable or current trends in terms of parking dimensions in and around the GTA. And I'm wondering if there's anything specifically relating to the St. Catharines market that would, number one, let me back up. Number one, I would like some comment from someone that can provide that comment as to what their opinion is of what the applicant's consultant said. And number two, is there something specific to the St. Catharines market which would force one to consider some form of modification to that? Does that make sense?
Not crystal clear.
And I think I will digress for a moment and say people may not be aware of the fact that we are not, on the committee, we are not parking experts, nor are we, quote, planning experts. So we seek input. So we're receiving it from the applicant, and we also receive in the form of a technical report the opinion of staff. And we're balancing all this information in order to make what we believe is an intelligent decision. So we heard what you said. Now I'm looking to staff to sort of counter or
Corroborate what was,
Correct.
okay, so is there a member of staff who would like to comment on the traffic study that was provided and how that would have impacted staff's decision-making or not?
Steve Bittner with Traffic. The study they presented, the turning movement, everything's fine. Like, you know, we looked at it, we said it's complete, it supports the argument. They wouldn't have submitted it if it didn't. So I can speak from traffic so for traffic, what we want to do is maximize the operational efficiency of the parking area. So we have always defaulted, bigger is always better for us. Keep in mind, we're strictly operational. There's other needs that come into play. So we will always default to the zoning bylaw, always. Now, sometimes there's a difference between not being supportive and objecting. Objecting means, no, that won't work. That can't do it. And the problem with parking and parking standards is there is a tipping point at some point, but if you look at the standards that are out there, there's a whole variety of standards that are out there. But when it comes to larger vehicles, if you were going to build the dream to accommodate everything, you're probably 3x6 with probably a 7-meter aisle. BA would probably know better than I would. So we recognize the fact that we are going to compromise the maneuverability for larger vehicles. So what we're saying is, even under our current standards, and they've demonstrated it, you have to do a multi-point turn for larger vehicles. For us, for traffic is, okay, the standards are already compromised. Let's not compromise them further. And so that's our position. We're not saying what they're proposing won't work. What we're saying is, given the choice between the two, and for us, we have a choice, it's a binary choice, is we want the bigger area. It shouldn't be aspirational. We're going to put in smaller parking to discourage people from it. I'm not saying they're claiming that, but we hear that. Put in less parking so people won't. We have to deal with the reality of today. And so that's where we at. Is St. Catharines unique to Toronto? No, a vehicle's a vehicle's a vehicle. And for one more point, and for us, the dilemma we have is we say as traffic, this is okay, this is what it is, then that should be our minimum standard going forward. Again, a parking area is a parking area is a parking area. It doesn't matter where it is. And so we have always said it's got to be the bylaw. Did we support what was proposed before? Yeah, we didn't like it, but we can't require beyond the bylaw.
Okay, thank you so much. Any more questions or comments from the committee members to the applicant and/or staff? If not, I will allow the applicant a brief time to comment on anything that they've heard in their summary of their application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I'll try and remember all the things that were said. Maybe I'll start with the last thing that was said, because I think we have a lot of common ground in our opinion on parking design. Where I disagree a little bit is on a parking space is a parking space is a parking space. I think the vehicle populations that you see and the types of vehicles that you see can be more concentrated or different at different types of land uses. If you go to Costco or Home Depot, you're going to see a lot of pickup trucks, a lot of big SUVs, a lot of big vans. And we've done classification surveys of these different types of sites, shopping centers, and in particular residential buildings. And what we find in large multi-use residential buildings is actually you do see pickup trucks. I'm not saying you don't. You don't see the same concentration of them as you would in a commercial environment. And I think that's key because even, and I think staff would agree that even the current zoning bylaw, I think doesn't accommodate a pickup truck, but people manage with it. And as I said before, there are thousands of examples in other municipalities where this size of parking space that's being proposed in a residential building environment, what we're talking about here, work. Because the larger vehicles like the pickup trucks don't make up a high percentage of the population of vehicles that use those facilities. So I think that's where I differ a little bit on that. I'll try to get to, the next thing that pops into my mind is the use of the drive aisle and the piece of paint, that 0.4 meters piece of paint that projects beyond the columns. Actually, that's actually a good thing because most vehicles, again, not the pickup truck, but most vehicles, when they're parked in a parking space, even a foot away from the wall at the end of the parking space, do not project the full 5.6 meters out to the edge of the drive aisle. That edge of drive aisle is effectively operates as a drive aisle. Cars can maneuver in that space. Where it's only a piece of yellow paint. Cars can maneuver it, and they do maneuver it. And other municipalities have actually recognized that. Your old bylaw used to recognize that. You had a shorter space with a wider drive aisle because that's where the maneuvering takes place. Just because you painted the line, you went from 5.2 meters to 5.6 meters, that does not change the maneuverability of the drive aisle, provided you don't move the columns with it, which is what you did. You move the columns up to the edge of the drive aisle. That does affect the width of the drive aisle because cars can't maneuver, the columns are in the way. Cars will crash into the columns. In the proposed condition, the columns are set back to give you the effective drive aisle width that we used to have here and which other municipalities have recognized because it's only a piece of paint and cars do maneuver around it and in it, and it happens whether it's in an underground parking garage or a surface parking lot. That cars drive over that yellow line to get in and out of their parking space. And I apologize, was there another one that I missed? Were those the two key? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And through you, Chair, sorry, we'll wrap up quickly here. Just wanted to know, that's part of what Doug was talking about, what we're trying to facilitate, that extra column width, that's actually one of our variances, right? To make sure we provide that. So I think at the end of the day, like I understand traffic has a perspective on this, but we're asking, the reason why this committee exists is to grant us minor variances from the bylaw where it meets the 4 tests and where frankly it works. And that's what we were trying to show, showing all those terrain diagrams. Bottom line is it works, so.
Great, thanks so much. All right, we're at the point where we're gonna stop talking and put a motion on the floor regarding this application.
I'm jumping in. Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance application A625 as presented in the technical report be approved as the variances are minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw, and recognizing that there was an error in number 2, where it should have read 1.0 meters.
I think it was item number 3, but
Pardon?
I think it was item 3.
I thought it was item,
1.2 to 1 meter.
was it 3? Okay.
So is that your motion? With your,
That is my motion. I just want to make sure I've covered everything off to your,
we have to do the foretest kind of comment?
yes, I do. As the variances are minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
All right, in summary of what I thought I just heard, is you are in support of not staff recommendation, but in fact granting all 6 variances that the applicant has asked for.
No, I referred to the technical report.
Okay, so you're,
I didn't refer to the notice of hearing. I referred to the technical report.
that's why it's worth talking about. So you are, in fact, your motion does in fact support staff recommendation.
Correct. Yeah, that's why I referred to it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, do you have a comment?
Just 2 clarifications. I noticed that there's an error on the technical report. Report number 8 says A625, it's actually A10. So the motion was read in on A6. The application is actually A10. And,
The application for me.
yeah, just
Yeah,
it was
you're
read in as
correct.
A6,
Yep.
not A10.
Yep,
And then variance 2 is proposed 1.4 meters, required is 1.2. Variance 3 is proposed 1.4, required 1. Is it variance 2 or variance 3? Because I thought I heard 1.2 to 1.
It was 2 that you mentioned.
Yeah.
It was variance 3, but that was the report. It's correction to the notice of hearing that it went from 1.2 to 1, as noted in the notice of hearing. So that's as in the report, as amended.
Friendly amendment to the motion. Thank you for the clarification.
And just a procedural question. If the motion is defeated, does it get rewritten or reread in the?
Yeah, we asked that out last meeting. Could you please remind us, Tammy, please?
Thank you. Through the chair, right now there's a motion up for the committee to make a determination and a vote on. If it should fail, then another member of the committee is welcome to replace it with another motion for voting on.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Those, okay, so to the applicant, your application has been approved unanimously. Thank you. Got a hot mic down there. It was a little late, but I'll get confirmation. Tom, that was approved unanimously, correct? Yep. So thank you all for participating in this conversation about this application. We're going to move on to our next file, which is 1607 8th Avenue, Louth. There's 2 consent applications regarding this property. So once there's a clear path to the horseshoe, please come on down to the applicant. Okay, actually, we're going to have a short recess. We'll call it a 5-minute recess. want to make a clarification on something that I muddied in the previous hearing. It'll be brief. Yes, there was a motion in support of the staff report, which I clarified, but then I muddied the situation by telling the applicant that their application was approved unanimously, when in fact it was approved as per the planning report. So that was the motion, that was the vote, that was clear. City staff will clarify with the applicant that my subsequent comments after that were in fact incorrect. However, I'll do a better job in this application, because we are now going to go to our second application at 1607 8th Avenue Louth for 2 consent applications. This is to divide up some agricultural rural property, and I would invite the applicant to state their name and address and can offer anything they want in support of their application. Yeah, it's the one, it's the little red light.
Red one? Okay. My name's Tim Kenny, 14 McCartney Court, Thorold, Ontario. I'm here representing both Herndon Estates Winery and my brother John Kenny, who lives at 1609 8th Avenue. This, I'm going to keep it brief. Staff, we agree with staff's recommendation. Simply want to say it's really not a severance of a piece of farmland. It's more of a lot line adjustment. We all know that Herndon Estates Winery had an awful fire out there and destroyed their operation. When they went to rebuild, they found that some of the existing services were encroaching onto my brother's land at 1609 8th Street. So what we've attempted to do is do a lot line adjustment, swapping an equal amount of land to accommodate the existing services at Herndon Estates. So as a result of this application, some of their services will be on their land as opposed to encroaching on my brother's property.
Okay, thanks so much. Any questions from the members of the committee? Is there anybody in the gallery who wishes to speak to this application for severances or lot line adjustment, but severances at 1607 8th Avenue, Louth? Nope, great. Would someone, a member of the committee, like to make a motion, please?
Sure. Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that consent applications B1724SC and B1824SC as presented in the notice of hearing be approved, subject to the conditions outlined in the technical report, as the consents are desirable and compatible with the surrounding area, have no adverse impacts on the surrounding properties, have regard to the provisions of Section 5124 of the Planning Act, conforms with the policies of the city's official plan, and with the conditions fulfilled also will comply with the zoning bylaw. They maintain the intent of the and purpose of the provincial planning statement, and they do not conflict with any applicable provincial plans.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Congratulations, your application has been approved unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, member.
Now we are going to scoot over to 1537 5th Avenue, Louth, for a consent application. Yeah, right. If we can have your particulars, name, address, and comments regarding in support of your application or anything you may have read in the staff report.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a presentation. So good evening, Chair, committee members. My name is Ethan Lamont. I'm a registered professional planner with Upper Canada Consultants. Our address is 30 Hanover Drive in St. Catharines. Our firm was retained by the Huesman family to assist with land use planning applications related to the severance of a surplus farm dwelling on their property. Excuse me. Joining me is the applicant, Brad Huesman. We acknowledge the staff report recommends refusal of the application. However, I intend to provide a thorough overview of the application and present my own planning opinion. Based on my review of the applicable policies and details of the application, I will demonstrate why I believe it is in full compliance with the relevant land use policies and regulations. Excuse me. So to begin, I want to provide some context for this application and explain why this severance is being sought. So there's two parcels involved with the proposal. So the subject lands from which the severance is proposed are located on the north side of 5th Avenue Louth, highlighted in yellow on this aerial photo. The property is approximately 19.5 acres, or about 48 acres in area, with 306 meters, or just over 1,000 feet of frontage on 5th Ave. It's primarily used for grape cultivation and contains several agricultural buildings that support this use. The property also contains two principal residences, one in the southwest corner addressed as 1583 5th Avenue Louth, and another one near the agricultural buildings in the eastern portion of the property addressed as 1537 5th Avenue Louth. Additionally, a farm help house is present on the property. The second property is located directly across the street and is highlighted in brown. It's also used for grape production. The parcel is approximately 8.25 hectares, or 20 acres, in size, with 169.5 or 550 feet of frontage. While it contains an agricultural building, its A2 zoning prohibits the construction of residential dwellings. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Brad to share his experience and explain the reasoning behind his severance request.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I've never done this before, so forgive me if I make a mistake. I have lived and worked in vineyards on 5th Avenue, Louth, in St. Catharines my entire life. I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but I am. We used to have a welcome to wine country sign on the number 8 highway that overlooked all the vineyards on 5th Avenue. As of, they've all been removed, and that sign was moved to Niagara-on-the-Lake. On 5th Avenue now, there are only 3 operating vineyards right now, and one of them is the parcel that we are talking about. If this severance would allow me the ability to consolidate this vineyard to my existing farming operation, so I can continue farming in this agricultural area. As you know, there is significant upfront investment required to plant and maintain vineyards. This severance will enable me to reinvest in the farm as opposed to tying up all my equity in a house, owning and maintaining it, which I do not require. I would like to spend all my time and money on agriculture and not as a landlord. This severance will enable me to expand my existing operation and ensure long-term economic sustainability. This will ensure that it remains in agricultural production well into the future, as this farm has been a family farm for over 100 years, and I would like it to maintain that for the next 100 years.
Could we go to the next slide, please? So here are some photos of the existing dwellings on the property. So the photo on the left shows the dwelling addressed as 1583 5th Avenue Louth, located in the southwestern corner of the property. So this is the dwelling that's proposed to be severed. The photo on the right shows the 1537 dwelling, which will be retained with the farm. Both dwellings are quite old. I understand they were constructed sometime in the mid-1800s, but despite their age, you can see they're well maintained and in excellent condition. Next slide, please. So now turning to the details of the proposal, the application proposes to sever 0.4 hectares or 1 acre parcel containing the dwelling addressed as 1583 5th Avenue, which is shown in part 2 on this severance sketch and outlined in red. The severance is being sought to allow for Brad to purchase this farm and consolidate it with his existing farm holding on the other side of the street. As a result, approximately 27 hectares or 67.5 acres of actively cultivated grape farmland will be brought under singular ownership, supporting long-term agricultural viability and efficiency. Importantly, the dwelling being severed is located in the corner of their property, which minimizes any impact on farming operations while maximizing retention of productive agricultural land. The proposed lot size is also the minimum lot size permitted under regional policy for properties on private services. All the remaining agricultural structures including the second dwelling in the farm help house, will be retained with the farmland. These structures are clustered near the center of the property and will continue to support the agricultural operation. Both the severed and retained lots comply with the frontage and area requirements of the zoning bylaw. A few of the structures have existing deficient front yard setbacks due to their age. However, the application would not aggravate this existing condition. Next slide, please. So now I want to take a step back and explore what a surplus severance actually is. So a surplus severance is defined in the provincial planning statement as one existing habitable detached dwelling, including any associated additional residential units that are rendered surplus as a result of farm consolidation, the acquisition of additional farm parcels to be operated as one farm operation. So surplus severances are a unique policy tool because in most cases, provincial policy discourages lot creation or any form of land fragmentation in agricultural areas. However, surplus severances are permitted because they remove barriers to farm consolidation, which supports the agricultural sector by creating larger and therefore more economically viable farms. So why is this important? Additional dwellings can be a financial and maintenance burden for farmers, making consolidation more difficult. By allowing surplus dwellings to be severed, farmers can avoid the cost of purchasing and maintaining unnecessary homes. This frees up capital to invest directly into the farm and prevents farmers from having to take on the added responsibility of being landlords, allowing them to focus on farming instead of managing residential properties. Next slide, please. So the policy framework governing surplus farm severance is set out in 3 key documents: the provincial planning statement, the Niagara official plan, and the St. Catharines official plan. So the overarching policy framework comes from the provincial policy statement, which permits lot creation for 1 new residential lot per farm consolidation for a residence surplus to an agricultural operation, provided the new lot is limited to the minimum size needed to accommodate the use and appropriate sewage and water services, and that new dwellings and additional residential units are prohibited on any remnant parcel of farmland created by the severance. Next slide, please. The Niagara official plan provides similar direction, but includes additional requirements such as the dwelling needs to have existed as of June 16, 2006. Next slide, please. And finally, the City of St. Catharines official plan contains even more specific policy requirements for surplus severances, including provisions related to farm consolidation, minimum lot size, dwelling quality, and compliance with minimum distance separation. Next slide, please. So I want to highlight 2 key policy components of surplus farm severances, the first being farm consolidation. So the St. Catharines official plan specifies that surplus severances should result from the consolidation of contiguous parcels. However, neither the PPS nor the Niagara official plan includes this requirement. Instead, they define farm consolidation as the acquisition of farm parcels to be operated as a single farm operation. While the parcels in this case are separated by a road, their proximity clearly allows them to function as one cohesive farm operation. It's my opinion that farm consolidation is occurring. In discussions in this project with staff, they've indicated that they agree with this interpretation. Next slide, please. Secondly, and where my opinion differs from that of staff's, is with regard to whether the dwelling is rendered surplus as a result of the consolidation. So the staff report states the dwelling is not surplus as a result of the farm consolidation, but rather it's surplus due to the legal non-conforming status of there being 2 existing dwellings on the property. In my opinion, the legal non-conforming status does not disqualify a dwelling from being considered surplus as a result of farm consolidation. Both situations can be true simultaneously. So recall that farm consolidation is defined in the provincial planning statement as the acquisition of additional farm parcels to be operated as one farm operation. In this case, the farmer is acquiring an additional farm property with 2 dwellings on it. As a result of acquiring this property, the farmer will have a dwelling that is surplus to the needs of the farm. Therefore, it's my opinion that the dwelling is surplus as a result of the farm consolidation. Next slide, please. In addition to the above policies, surplus severances must also meet additional technical policies, including minimum lot size and frontage, requirement that the dwelling be habitable and not intended for demolition, prohibition of new residential development, and the provision of safe driveway access to a public road. The application complies with these technical criteria as well. Next slide, please. So in my professional planning opinion, when considering the totality of the proposal, it's clear that the application aligns with the intent of the applicable policies and will result in the desired planning outcome. The farmer is consolidating farmland to create a larger, more economically viable agricultural operation. As part of this consolidation, the farmer is acquiring 2 dwellings, one of which is surplus to the long-term needs of the farm. Provincial and local policies recognize this situation and provide a framework to allow for the severance of surplus dwellings, provided that technical criteria are met. As outlined in the previous slides, this application satisfies these criteria. The result of the application is the creation of a larger, consolidated farm unit with a single principal residence, which is exactly what surplus farm severance policies are designed to achieve. Additionally, the application presents an opportunity to rectify the legal non-conforming status of the dwelling, ensuring its preservation rather than its gradual disappearance over time. Given these considerations, I respectfully ask the committee to approve the application. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments or clarifications required from the members of the committee?
I just want to be clear. So you're Brad? Yes. Okay. So your intention is to buy 1537, correct? Yes. And live there, live in the dwelling?
No, it is, right now, it is used as a temporary foreign helper house.
One of them?
One of them is.
Okay.
And the other one is a residence.
Okay. So you want to peel off the one other residence?
The one that
And
someone
sell
else
it?
is living in, and
Yeah.
just continue my farm as it is.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Additional to that, sorry, do you have the figure 2 from the report that the applicant provided? I'm just curious because it shows a seasonal farm residence in addition to 1537. And
There is another worker house. It's a trailer, but I'm not using that one anymore. They've moved in. I've had the same people working for me for 25 years, so I moved them into the bigger house.
they'll move into 1537.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
They will move into 1537?
They are living in there right now.
And I did pick up on a comment from the region. Is this, I mean, I guess whether it's 0.99 or 1 acre, there's a comment about the size required for a septic system, and a new one will be required to be built here?
That was the minimum size of the proposed lot. I think there was a comment in your presentation about it being the minimum size.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So the minimum lot size in the regional official plan for lots on private services, so septic systems, is 1 acre, which is what the lot size is proposed to be.
Okay, yeah, just in the comments from the region, they noticed it was 0.9 acres, 0.99 acres, but more concerning was, my next question was, it says the septic system currently is not wholly within the several.
That is incorrect. When they came to inspect it, they used Google Maps, which is really fun because if you bring up Google Maps again, because we brought this up with them, but they did not correct it. I showed the septic line runs on the outside of the last row of grapes. But when they came, the outside 3 rows were ripped out. So when he was walking down the last row, he put it on the map on the neighbor's property. But if you look right now, and I can show you a picture on Google Maps, those rows are gone. So now you see that the septic was there.
So those rows shown in part 2 that are shown as vineyards, those are.
Well, you see the septic used to run in the rows, but now that the rows are gone, they showed it outside of that row. So that was a mistake by them. But they did come out to inspect it,
Yeah.
and the septic did pass inspection.
It was an incorrect reference point, essentially.
Thanks much. Is there anybody in the gallery who wishes to speak to this application? Give you your name and address and turn on your microphone. Could you turn on, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Marshall. My address is 7863 Range Road 1 in Smithville.
Your comments are welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. As manager of the Ontario Fresh Grape Growers, I'm here to support Brad in his application. Brad is a grower member of the organization that I work for and support with 73 members. This is down from 111 growers just 12 years ago. So I'm here as a concerned citizen to try to prevent the further loss of growers. I understand the planning authorities are required to use an agricultural system approach to maintain and enhance a geographically continuous land base and support and foster the long-term economic prosperity and productive capacity of the agri-food network. This application may be to sever a surplus house from a farm parcel, but make no mistake, this application is very much about long-term economic prosperity and protection of the agricultural land base, with protection of the land base being a fundamental cornerstone of the Greenbelt Plan. How does severing a house from a farm protect the agricultural land base? Quite simply, it allows the farmer, as we've heard from their application, to free up capital to reinvest in their agricultural operation. Productive farmland is protected farmland. Farmland planted with perennial crops such as grapes requires significant capital investment of anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 per acre to establish. With the current U.S. trade threats, protecting domestic food security is paramount. Yet the number of growers in Canada and Niagara decreases with every farm census. In St. Catharines, between 2016 and 21, there was a loss of 27 farming operations. Also in this time period, St. Catharines lost 621 acres of farmland from production. These two parcels in the Greenbelt Specialty Crop area are immediately across from each other, separated only by a rural road, which with consolidation will result in an efficient and more economically sustainable farm for the Huseman family. According to the Canadian Bar Association, 88% of farms in Canada don't have a succession plan. This is one of the leading causes of farmland loss across the province, including within the Greenbelt area. The complexities of transitioning farm ownership from one generation to another is complicated. This can be further complicated when there are multiple family members involved, such as Mr. Huseman's situation. Brad wants to continue farming and has worked with his family to identify a scenario where he can keep Greenbelt specialty cropland in production. His proposal meets the requirements of the Greenbelt Plan's lot creation policies, as we've seen, and the retained worker housing, which is permitted, and if the City of St. Catharines can put APO on the property to ensure it remains in agriculture. We as a society should empower and support this application, especially with a situation where there is family that wants to continue farming. Brad has to buy his parents' farm to help offset this purchase. The sale of the house he does not need and his surplus to the operation makes this purchase viable. He wants to expand production on his parents' land. He cannot take on the cost of buying the farm and expand the acreage of specialty crops. By severing off the house, he can't afford to do it. We don't have to look far beyond Brad's farm to see examples of Greenbelt land that has been bought by land speculators. The lands west of Huseman Farm were once planted vineyards. Now they sit fallow. St. Catharines already has lost 621 acres of farmland since 2016. Let's keep that number down and work to reverse it. On behalf of the association I work for, Ontario Fresh Grape Growers Marketing Board, I'm requesting respectfully that the committee approve Brad's application. Thank you.
Enthusiastic support. Thank you so much for your contribution. Is there any questions from the members of the committee to the speaker? Oh, great, thanks so much, appreciate it. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to this application?
Good evening. My name is Debbie Zimmerman. I'm the CEO of the Grape Growers of Ontario. 1634 South Service Road is our address. Mine is 1609 Gregory Road, St. Catharines. I'm not going to repeat what Sarah said. I just wanted to say I'm here as a representative of the Grape Growers of Ontario supporting the Huseman family application. Adding a bit of color to what to adding a bit of reference to Sarah's comments, the Huseman family have been grape growers for a very long time. I'll leave Brad to sort of identify the exact year that they were in business. But if you look at Niagara, Niagara in itself is the largest grape growing region in Canada, but the loss has been significant more lately. You cannot farm a 20-acre farm and make any money. You need to have a much larger application of land, and this is what we're asking for, this consolidation. If you look at the overall economic impact of tender fruit and of grapes in this province, in this country, it is significant. But we're facing the challenges every day of not being able to sell our grapes or not being able to move our product because of some of the challenges we have. One of the last things we want to see is the city preventing us from growing. This is in the Greenbelt. It is in land that we can grow and grow grapes on. But consolidation is necessary. So I just wanted to add a few comments, and thank you.
Thank you so much. It's nice to hear people come out in support of applications. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this application? Okay, thank you. You must be happy with that. So there's nothing to respond to. Any further requirements? Okay, I'll take a motion then.
Can I ask a question? We have two options here. If we were to introduce a motion that would support the application as opposed to the technical report, would there be conditions that the planning department would want?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have provided some recommended conditions should committee decide to approve the application tonight.
Do we have them? Thank you.
Can someone show us the recommended, conditions? Are they on this? Can you put on the screen? Were there a large number of conditions? Or just a couple of conditions?
Do you have a hard copy?
I do not have a hard copy. I can show it to you on my screen if you would like. I can bring it over.
You could read it to us.
Sure. Yeah. Let me open it up.
Okay, they're on the screen right now. There are 6 conditions. Actually, could you read them to us anyway, just to go along with the visual?
Sure. So going from 1 to 6, 1, that the owners submit to the Secretary Treasurer, the Committee of Adjustment, a final certification fee of $230 2024 rate, so that would be increased to the 2025 rate, payable to the Treasurer, City of St. Catharines, that all conditions of consent be fulfilled these conditions were written back in August when we first saw it, so that would be amended to February, what day is it today, 19th, 2027. That the owner provide the Secretary Treasurer with an acknowledgement and direction for conveyance of the subject parcel, together with a copy of the deposited reference plan for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. That 1583 Fifth Avenue Louth pass an occupancy inspection from the city's building inspection staff. The applicant will be responsible for the cost of the inspection. That the location of the existing septic system is confirmed, and if not in compliance with the requirements of the Ontario Building Code, the existing septic system be decommissioned, and that a new septic system is to be wholly contained within the boundaries of the severed lot. And 6, that the rezoning of the remnant parcel to agricultural only, or A2, to preclude its use for residential purposes in perpetuity.
Can I ask you about the last one, the last condition? So essentially that would mean 1537 would preclude its use for residential purposes. So my understanding is there are actually people living there in a house, in a dwelling. I think it's your employees, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So what would be the status of that?
It's an agricultural support, so it's not the same as a,
Through you, Mr. Chair, the house on the property, the two houses on the property were presented to us as single detached dwellings. Now hearing that they're occupied by farm help house, it really makes me hesitate because in order to qualify for surplus, you need two detached residential dwellings. Essentially, a farm help house would not qualify for surplus to needs. You have to have two houses on farmlands, and one of them is surplus to your needs. So the thought is that you continue to live in the one house, and the other house you don't need because you have the other, so you sever it off. To answer the committee member's question, the intent of this policy is to make sure that no new houses be constructed, because in the typical occurrence, there are two separate parcels that are consolidated. One of those houses is severed off, and the remnant from that severance is zoned A2, and it doesn't have any implications because there's no house on it. In staff's interpretation of the policy, as a result of farm consolidation, we are not of the opinion that this is as a result of consolidation. It is surplus by nature of having two houses on the lot, which is kind of shown in this instance where we rezoned the remnant parcel to A2, but there's a house there that is now not permitted, and we are required to rezone it to A2 to not permit a house. This was staff's thinking in recommending denial of the application before us, and it is a very, I can appreciate that you really have to read the policy and consider how it's written. When I made this opinion, this is my opinion and I stick by it. If you would like any further clarification on anything, please let me know. Thanks.
thanks much.
So, sorry, I had my mic on. 1537 is currently A2, is it not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the property on the south side of Fifth Avenue, I can't recall the address at this moment, is A2, does not permit a house and does not have a house on it.
Correct. But 1537, which is the subject address, is A2, is it not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no.
On the north side?
It is on the north side, it's zoned A1. So it permits one detached dwelling. As Ethan mentioned, these houses were constructed sometime in the 1800s before zoning bylaws were in place, which is how we have two houses on the lot today.
Okay, so 1537 is currently zoned A1, which permits a residential dwelling, correct?
Correct.
What's precluding us from changing or removing number 6?
Through the chair.
Am I missing something?
Through the chair to the committee member, provincial policy in surplus severances requires that anytime you sever off a house as surplus, that the remnant agricultural lot not be permitted to have any more houses on it, any new houses on it. So that requirement comes from provincial policy, which is reflected in regional, which is reflected in local policy.
So I'm assuming that by virtue of the help living in the house, that's still deemed to be residential, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, may I step in here for a moment?
What, do you want to finish your thought?
Yeah. It was originally constructed as a dwelling. I would argue, based on the information we've heard tonight, that is not the current use of it. It is legal nonconforming. I would argue that the operation of a single detached dwelling has ceased and it has now become a farm help house if they are living in it, which again shows that the intent is that Brad lives on the farm lot and he has a house there that he doesn't need because he lives in it, but he doesn't live on this property. It really muddies the waters for me.
Thank you.
Is there any clarification from
Sorry,
the applicant?
I don't mean to take over.
Certainly through you, Chair. So I think there's a little bit of confusion. The intent is that the house remaining on the farm is the principal residence on the property. So there's the house being severed, and then there would be one dwelling being retained as the principal residence for the farm. And then with regard to the A2 zoning, I mean, you can make the argument that that's already been satisfied by virtue of the fact that the other farm parcel is A2, so that secures the use of that property in perpetuity for farming. I've done a surplus severance in another situation similar to this, where there was a house staying on the overall parcel, and the A2 zoning was basically site-specifically tailored to basically recognize that there is an existing dwelling, but that no additional or residential use could be constructed on the property, essentially. So that's how that was dealt with in that other case that I dealt with, so.
Okay, I'm going to take a wing at it.
Can I say, add something? Oh, sorry, I have to tell you. I'm super confused how there's two houses on the property, yet there isn't a surplus dwelling. And yes, I did state that there is some help living in there now, which I thought was better than leaving the house vacant. We do have a mobile home that they could be living in also. I'm just trying to get the farm so that I can farm it.
That's clear. That's fine. That's great.
I'm just really confused. Thank you.
It's all good.
Okay. Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that consent number B1324 SC be approved as presented in the notice of hearing, subject to the conditions that are shown on the screen, save and except for the fact that the date should reflect today's date, February 19th, and removing the last condition as the consent is desirable and compatible with the surrounding area, has no adverse impacts on the surrounding properties, has regard for the provisions of Section 5124 of the Planning Act, conforms with the policies of the city's official plan, and will also comply with the zoning bylaw, maintain the intent and purpose of the provincial planning statement, and does not conflict with any applicable provincial plans, period.
All right, my attempt at summarizing that, and not to muddy things, and the subtlety is you referred to the application. So you are speaking against staff recommendation in support of what the applicant has asked for, and including conditions 1 through 5. Is there?
And modifying number 2 to reflect the current date.
Yes. Okay.
2 years from today.
Okay. Is there any discussion among the committee?
I don't think we got an answer from the applicant if they objected to condition 6, because the presentation was to continue farming and to expand that use. So I just didn't know if there was a concern with condition 6.
With number 6? That means
ask your planning consultant.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I don't have a concern with complying with condition 6. It would just have to be a site-specific A2 zoning permission to recognize, at least the way I understand it, it would have to be a site-specific zoning to recognize that there is a dwelling on the property. But other than that, it would be something that could be complied with.
Okay, great, thanks. We should be working with the information we had.
Okay, so let's run that out.
Well, there was, during the discussion part of our meeting, which is over now since we have a motion on the floor, there was an example given of a previous application where there was approval of a similar situation with respect to, so that was the information that was provided relative to how it pertains to item number 6 in this. Right now, the motion has removed condition 6, and now there's some second thoughts about whether or not the applicant might even care whether or not we have condition 6 in it or not, but there was already a description about how they felt about that through their planning consultant. So are we prepared to continue with our motion as it is?
So reiterating what you said, you believe that you would be comfortable with a condition number 6 that rezoned the property to A2 with a proviso that there would not be any additional dwellings built on the property or allowed on the property. Is
That's
that right?
correct, yes.
So why don't we include number 6 along the lines of so you're comfortable with the way it's written?
I believe that it's something that we can work with, certainly, yes.
Okay.
All right, so through further discussion, one could say that you're amending your motion to include all of staff recommended conditions 1 through 6. With the revision of the date, yes. All right. All those in favor of the motion? I can confidently say your can't confidently say it. Your application approved with the conditions proposed by staff. You can hammer out the details on your own. Okay, so our next item, Martindale Road, has been, we dealt with that earlier with respect to a deferral. I don't know where Carrie just went. So that brings us to 33 Arthur Street, 2 minor variances, or 2 applications for minor variances. So this is a discrepancy between what was proposed to be constructed and what actually was constructed with respect to parking space in an enclosed garage, I believe. That's what we're talking about. So if the applicant could clarify anything they wanted to with their application, give us your name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Mark Eitzen. I reside at 6 Crown Street in the North End. This is my wife, Wendy, and we're co-applicants with Mr. Ben Lockyer. He owns the right side of the building, which is 33A. So we're here to discuss, regrettably, the parking issue that's already been before the committee today, just in a slightly different light. So the parking issue is becoming a bigger challenge for the city all the time, and it's not visible in the picture, but we have a legal auxiliary dwelling unit in the basement of both 33 and 33 Arthur. So we've invested a significant amount of time, effort, and obviously resources into building a legal dwelling within the city that's in compliance with all the current building codes. And we're also local residents, we're homeowners, we live 5 minutes away from our investment property. So we disagree with the staff report in the sense that we believe that our request is in fact minor in nature. At the time that we built these properties and completed the driveways pre-April 2024, the zoning amendment at that time allowed for a driveway width was 50% of the front lot, equaling 4.6 meters. We're asking for 5.5 now. So obviously the main issue is you can see that the light gray pavers in the image there, they take up too much of the property. We recognize that. And we are making application to have that reduced, but still be partially there. So it's important to note that the city actually installed the new sidewalk and converted the boulevard, visible in the image there, as the gravel portion to the right of the left driveway and obviously to the left of the right driveway, before we added the additional parking area. The noteworthy objection that to our application is that a tree can't be planted in the boulevard and we maintain that clearly a tree can't be planted, but that's on the street side of the sidewalk, and that's not our responsibility for putting in that gravel there. So what makes our plan here unique is that the city did install those wider aprons. Without that, we likely wouldn't have put in the extra parking, but as you can imagine with the auxiliary dwelling unit, we have the constant problem of vehicles. And I understand, Mr. Chair, that you personally have a disdain for vehicles, and I respect that, but we can't control what our tenants may or may not do. So on top of that, on a personal note, I'd like to add that I've been a police officer here in Niagara for 18 years, and that exposes me to many forms of tragedy. I know we've had a mutual friend that was killed by a vehicle in Niagara-on-the-Lake in 2022, and I've personally I ended that year with a young man who was killed by a motor vehicle, and our concern is that if we can't have our tenants park on our property, essentially, the only option left is on the west side of Arthur Street, which currently is legal parking on the shoulder. While Vision Zero is a great stated aim, we believe that it may never be fully achievable, and we feel that we are condemning our tenants to essentially run across the street every time they want to access their vehicles. And that's why we feel that given Niagara's reputation as a high fatality area, and I mean that's statistically proven, we lead the region of all Waterloo, Hamilton, Halton, Peel, and Durham. We have the highest number of fatal motor vehicle interactions in any of those regions. And as homeowners, to be honest, we're just trying to prevent that. We're trying to keep our tenants on our side of the street. One of the second safety concerns that we'd like to bring forward is Croydon, intersects Arthur Street on the north. There's a south and a north intersection. The north intersection of Croydon, you can actually see it there at the top right of the image. That's where Croydon intersects Arthur Street. And if you're exiting there and the vehicles are parked on the shoulder opposite our properties, it obstructs sight lines south down the road, which would obviously increase the likelihood of motor vehicle collisions there as well. There's a supporting letter that was written by Erica Workington, who resides in the neighborhood on Croydon, and I think you hopefully had a chance to review that letter where she explains the issue with the sight lines there. So neighbors in that area that we've talked to, they're opposed. I met with her personally when I was standing in the driveway with Councillor Dodge discussing this issue, actually. And my third and final point surrounds snow events, and this winter has again demonstrated the snowfall is a Canadian guarantee, and that plows on the road are the inevitable outcome. As property owners, we don't find it reasonable to have our tenants park their vehicles on the west side of the street where they'll now be an impediment to snowplows. In fact, this past snow event, we've again had a very reasonable order where we need vehicles moved off the street for obvious reasons, but then the obvious question is, well, what is the alternative for our tenants then? If you go on the St. Catharines website and query the AI bot that's currently on the website will reference the parking garages downtown. We feel that being so far in the north and that isn't reasonable given walking distances, obviously. So then essentially you might as well just take transit right at the beginning. Transit is not as accessible in the north end as it is downtown. So I guess to summarize my comments, and then I'll pass my comments off to Ben, we're just trying to be good stewards both for our tenants and to solve a parking problem. I understand that the city has kind of a generic opposition to vehicles on the landscape, and I respect that. We feel that those vehicles are currently there, whether they're on the east side of the road or the west side of the road. We can't control what our tenants do or don't drive, but we can provide a solution to this housing issue that the province is facing, and we're doing it as local landlords that are very much invested in this property. And I think with those remarks, I'll pass it off to Ben.
Just before, I mean, you have to appreciate the fact that there are zoning bylaws, and this was a new construction at the time that was before us previously, and the expectation is, officer, that you meet the zoning, you meet the requirements of the law. Otherwise, it seems as though you're taking advantage of the goodwill of the expectation under new construction that you're going to meet the zoning requirements. So obviously, for the reasons that you've given now, for the courtesy of the people who are living in those dwelling units, it also benefits the situation that you created by creating a wide enough driveway that people could park 2 cars adjacent to one another as opposed to tandem. So we're here now because you didn't sort of live up to the obligation that you committed to previously.
And in a sense, you're correct. We're not denying at all that we are in violation of the bylaw. I didn't get into the entire background, but if we were to go into the background, there's issues with the original plan and the house being built in the wrong spot geographically on the land. It was actually supposed to be set further back, so that parking was going to be an easier issue. There's probably records within the city of that having been adjusted. I believe there was an amendment that was made at that time. So ultimately, we were just trying to mitigate the circumstances of tenants having to cross the street. But I recognize, I don't dispute your point.
Good evening, Chair and Committee. My name is Ben Lockyer. I live at 2A Willowdale Avenue in St. Catharines. As a local real estate professional, I have the privilege of being in these types of properties on a daily basis. Today, I've been in 6 properties, and 2 of them had basement units because over my involvement over the last 15 years, the growing trend has been to add these accessory dwelling units. It's rare to go out on one of these tours now and not go into a basement that has an additional kitchen and people living in it. But I can only count on one hand the number of times that these properties, even though I'm in them daily, have been done so in a legal perspective or have the permit in order to do so. As a partner with the city, who has now built 3 of these, we do want to be a part of the housing solution and not part of the problem. But your practical consideration is requested. We know that there's now financial incentives to grant and create what we've done on our own, highlighting the desperate need for additional housing and pushing that. Things are changing, except with regards to the parking. And as our request to the committee is to consider this request both from a practical perspective, but also, as Mark laid out, from a safety perspective as well. How can we grant permission to these additional dwelling units while not considering the need for tenants to actually park side by side? The front-back parking solutions with a garage and an adjacent parking do not meet the needs of any living conditions when you build these accessory dwelling units. People will not be knocking on doors to their tenant upstairs in order to ask them to move their car so that they can get out of the driveway that they have been parking on. It's just not practical, even from an interpersonal perspective. We believe that the common sense approach, if we're going to make concessions for accessory dwelling units, needs to consider this additional parking as well. As Mark stated, we really do believe that 3 feet is a minor in nature and serves as a practical solution in order to not put our tenants and the people in the neighborhood at risk by creating additional traffic on the side of the street for sightlines and for crossing a busy through road. And we would appreciate some consideration on this matter. Furthermore, as was mentioned, the committee needs to appreciate the irony of the fact that the city would put gravel at the front of the apron and make that space available, removing the green space that they're now causing us to want to put back. It is, from a citizen perspective, it is a little bit interesting that that decision would be made for them to do that, and we're now having to put the green space back in when they maybe potentially violated their own principles. We're committed to the value of densification in our neighborhoods, but are looking for practical solutions to accommodate these vehicles in situations as such. Thank you.
So the intent of the 50% lot coverage is so that, if you can imagine, if every neighbor took advantage of paving over their green space all the way down the street to accommodate cars side by side, looking down that street, you'd be like a giant parking lot with a road down the middle. So the intent of this is to create a more pleasing streetscape, which allows for vegetation to be planted and not just for cars to be planted, dripping oil and whatnot. So so there was a contrived attempt by the planning official plan zoning bylaw to create better places for everybody, not just for the individuals who have an income property. So there's an idea of being sensitive to the neighbors who live adjacent to you, which is why it's here and under consideration. Is there any questions from are there any questions from Tom?
Yeah, just for the background, I just want to make sure I understand it. So in 2019, consent and 2 variances were applied for these dwellings, and then a reduction in parking was requested in 2021 to go from 2 units to 1, and then after they were built, the additional parking that would have been 2 spaces per unit were added?
Hi, I can talk to that. So the original request was for a 2-story property, and the committee wanted to reduce the height of the building. So that's why we went back to the drawing board and redesigned the layout. So when that happened, the garage was narrowed, so it didn't count as an official spot. Somehow our planner and the city overlooked that, and so the house, even though the architect designed the garage smaller, he actually showed the building further back, which would have allowed 2 legal tandem spots, but the site plan showed it moved forward. So in the end, it was built, and approved and built, but it only had 1 legal spot. So that was kind of a Hail Mary to make sure that we could get occupancy, even though it was, the intent was. But now we're dealing with a very practical issue. So the fact is, I mean, we've been renting out the accessory dwelling unit for the past 3 years. I would, like 100% of the applicants have vehicles. And in fact, a lot have 2 even. So on our side alone, we have 4 vehicles to accommodate. And that's just the reality. So, when we built it, we're dealing with zoning and bylaws and following everything, but now we're dealing with the practical issue that what was 1 single person living in a house with 1 vehicle has turned into 4 separate family-sized units that require multiple vehicles. So we're trying, and the difficulty is, to be honest, with 100% of applicants having vehicles, if we don't have a single space available for that unit, we're going to have a very difficult time renting it out, and it's going to turn into a vacant property potentially. And I think the streetscape would be very negatively impacted, because the only way we can do that is by lowering our expectations. And I've seen of the applicants we've had, I would be concerned about the neighborhood if we had to do that, because we want the best tenants in there, and clearly they need a place to park, especially during a winter storm like this.
So, through the chair, your original intention was to provide 1 space per unit, with the garage being a space, and when that was not allowed due to the size, that was the reason for the requested parking reduction?
Yeah, the original intent that the architect showed was that there would be 2 spaces on the driveway. So he showed the house further back. The garage is too narrow for a legal space. So when we presented it to the committee, our choices were either to ask for a variance on the width of the garage to make that a legal spot, and then it would only require 2, or would still require 2, or ask for a reduction. So legally, it only requires 1 spot for the 2 units. But practically, that's why we're here today, because practically it doesn't work.
But through you to the applicant, from a practical standpoint, in real life, you have 4 vehicles to accommodate per side, correct? So
I don't.
Okay.
I have a single
Yeah.
person living in the basement, a single person living upstairs, so 2.
We'll just rent out one of the spaces. No.
Maybe.
So practically speaking, you're having to find a home for 4 cars on your side, correct?
So, through the chair, our basement unit currently right now is a young couple. They both work, and they each drive a vehicle. So currently, one of them parks on the gray paver section, while the young family that resides upstairs, they're also a 2-vehicle family. It's a tradesman, he drives a black pickup truck, and then they have the family vehicle for the children. So they actually park their vehicles in tandem on the black paved portion. One tenant parks on the, let's call it a cobblestone portion, and the other tenant currently parks across the road. Now, the challenge is they're already facing the challenge with the current snow event, and we're not disputing that that's a useful. Obviously, the plows need to plow the road, but right now you're facing a 3-foot snowbank opposite the house. I don't even know where they would put their car.
Through you to planning, at one point in time, there was, and I can't remember the name, potentially, Chair, you would know what it's called. It's the pavers where the grass grows up in between.
Eco pavers?
Eco pavers. Is that considered to be hardscaping, or is that considered to be landscaping?
I'll let the city staff consider what, I mean, for parking purpose, it's a permeable surface for drainage, but city staff can comment on that if they wish.
Through the chair to the committee member, our definition in the zoning bylaw of parking area is something that is designed for or used. So if it is used for parking, it is considered a parking area. And if it is a parking area, it cannot be considered landscaped area.
May I add a comment as well?
Just one second, please. Sorry, any further questions from members of the committee? Otherwise, I'd like to ask the gallery if there's anybody there who wishes to speak to this application. So, no. Is there anybody in the gallery who wishes to speak to this application? Where are we? 33 Arthur Street. Anybody? Okay, great. Any final comments from the applicant?
I was just going to add that what's shown there obviously is existing. So what we're proposing is significantly less. What we're asking for is a driveway width of 5.5 meters, which would be at least 2 legal spaces according to the current zoning, so that we're not asking for something less than that. So it would, we are asking to remove a portion of those pavers. So that will increase the amount of grass, and in our application, it says there's 3 requests, and it deals with the landscaping as well, which off the top of my head, I believe we're asking for 26% from 30, but maybe you have them in front of you there.
Thank you.
Through the chair to staff, are there conditions associated with this if there is approval?
Through the chair, no, I don't think we would ever contemplate approval.
And I've a quick question for staff regarding, the side yard. There's a curb of some kind, flush to, as an extension of the plane of the side of the house, which creates there's a paved side yard with pavers. There's an asphalt drive aisle leading to the garage, and there's pavers on the other side. So is the width of this driveway, in fact, the side yard property line to the end of the hard surface where cars can park? Are we starting at the property line?
To the chair, no. So what you're seeing here is, because it's hard to see front on in this image, but there is a slight retaining wall, but it is of a high enough elevation because the property line is a little set back from the sidewalk. So in the original approved plans and on the development agreement registered on title, that is a walkway and continues to be considered a walkway, not part of the parking area. So the requested parking area width would be measured from the edge of the asphalt driveway. If we're looking at the closest house to left, and then over to the pavers.
Okay, great, thank you for the clarification. Yep.
So bottom line is that is a sidewalk to the left?
Yes.
So that is not part of the existing, quote, driveway?
Right, because there's a retaining wall distinction and an elevation change, however slight it might be.
Okay, so why can't that be changed to landscaping?
Through the chair, the pathway is so that our basement tenants can access the ADU. That's why it's a paved surface. If you have to push a stroller or whatever the case, it's access for the back apartment. That's why that walkway's there.
Can I make a comment?
But it's also going past this retaining wall, which has some minor height. So, I mean, it seems as though the property line ends where the neighbor's new concrete is and where this retaining wall ends. So you can kind of see where the setback, where the property line is setback from the asphalt or from the sidewalk. But it's a functioning walkway. It's recognized by the city as being distinct from a driveway and therefore not part of the width. So the city's already suggesting it's not an issue for them.
Okay, so we're looking at what is in place now. What is your proposal, like visually? How do we delineate where your proposal would be?
Well, I'm going to guess that you're going to you want to go 5.5 meters from the face of that retaining wall toward the middle of your property, and wherever that line is, you'll remove all of the pavers that are beyond that and replace it with sod. So, and that'll come from both sides. So the grass strip in the middle will grow whatever the resultant, whatever the leftover is, to remove some of the pavers.
I can give you a reference if that's okay, Mr. Chair. So the driveway, the asphalt driveway is 3 meters in width, and what we're asking for is 5.5 in total. So a portion of that asphalt driveway would be contributed to the second vehicle. And in determining the path, so we left it on the application that we would also make a minor variance to reduce the front landscaping to 26% from 30%. And the reason I did that is because if we didn't need that and we achieved 30%, we could remove a little portion of that path, that walkway, but it would only leave a very small grass square, which I thought was impractical. So that's why when coming here, we presented that way. But I do want to say that the parking is 100% our most concern. So any way that we can achieve that, we are open, but that's why I presented it that way.
Okay, thanks so much. So there's no one wish to speak to this. We've asked all of our questions. So at this point, we can move, invite somebody to make a motion regarding this application.
Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance application A225 as presented in the notice of hearing be approved as the variance is minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
You doing O1 as well?
A1 and A2.
Right. So going against the staff recommendation and approving both applications for minor variance. All those in favor? Those opposed? So your application's been approved, but not unanimously.
We got a few beauties today, eh?
Okay, so we're getting there, folks. Thank you for bearing with us. 5 Rush Home. Come on down.
Absolutely. It's not, yes.
Okay, so this is a minor variance application for proposed attached garage with accessory dwelling unit. There are a couple of minor variances associated with this, so if you wanted to take us through your application, we'd appreciate it. Give us your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name's Hank Nauta, and I own the company Nauta Home Designs. Our office is at 1789 Mirabel Highway, Welland, Ontario. And to the chair, committee and staff, gallery, thank you very much. Having read the planner's report, And looking at the comments and the recommendations from the planning department, we have no comments and no objections to variances 1 and 2. But with further discussions yesterday and this morning with my client, and looking hard at variance number 3, we are humbly requesting to have variance number 3 removed from our applications for tonight's meeting. And further to the chair.
So you're withdrawing it as in, okay, good. So variance number 1 and 2, you're in support of staff's comments, and variance number 3 removed from your application altogether.
That's correct.
All righty.
And to the chair, I'd like to add, should the committee members have questions as to that regards to variance number 3, in looking at the recommendations and the view of the staff in terms of variance number 3, should the committee be asking the question of how would we be able to comply, we would be revising the blueprints at the time for when we apply for the building permit to make sure that we do not exceed 80 square meters for the ADU.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Blueprints. We don't use blueprints anymore. Any questions of members of the committee to the applicant? Nope. Anybody in the gallery wishes to speak to this application? Nope. Motion, please.
Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that variance number A325 be approved. Let me rephrase that. As presented in the technical report, be approved, subject to the withdrawal of variance number 3, as the variances, the 2 variances that are left are minor in nature, appropriate, desirable for the use of the land, and are in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
All those in favor? Great, your application's been approved unanimously. With the, here we go. Your applications for variances 1 and 2 have been approved, 3 has been removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so let's keep the momentum going here and find ourselves at 29 Johnston Street. Okay, so welcome. We have consent to minor variance application. This is to facilitate construction of a proposed 2-story detached dwelling. So we have staff report, which has a number of conditions related to, a whole bunch of conditions related to the consent, 11, and staff recommendation for approval of the minor variance. So you can state your name and address and share with us your thoughts on your application. Appreciate it.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, and all members of the committee. First of all, thank you for all the recommendations. We just have some comments on it. I'm representing 29 Johnston Street in behalf of the client. We've been working on the design of their house for a while, and that becomes, as you mentioned, the consent, a couple of minor variances for the part 1 of the lot. Basically, we only have a couple of concerns regarding the points number 4 and 5 and 6, which is require the construction of the 1.5 meters sidewalk on the property by Johnston Street. We noticed that on the same street, Johnston and Bayview, there's a Severn lot already, and it doesn't have this condition, being also an existing corner house. And we just wonder if we can move that fee until the project is going to be really built.
We'll do this one at a time. So you're contesting or condition number 4, which is to cough up some dough for the estimated cost of construction for a 1.5 meter wide concrete sidewalk along the entire frontage of Johnson Street. I think the city has a definition for why they ask for these sorts of things. So if I could ask a member of staff to comment on whether sometimes applicants want to be able to pay the cost themselves. The city has standards in which they want to be able to have the money and have their own contractors do it. And sometimes there are actually going to be a sidewalk installed here, or it goes into a fund to install a sidewalk somewhere else. So could you comment on what applies to this application?
Through your chair, these are the standard conditions to apply for a new lot creation where we ask for payment for the sidewalk where it's not present.
Okay. And is there any, there was some observation about an adjacent property that may or may not have had to apply with this. Is there a comment on that?
Through the chair, sorry, I just wanted to add that there actually already is a sidewalk along the west side of Johnson Street along a portion of this block, but the current sidewalk dead ends about 2 properties south of here. So it's staff's opinion that's very important that we collect the payment so that we can more expeditiously complete that connection.
Great, thanks. Are you okay with the idea that we're building on a dream here, that will eventually there'll be a sidewalk all the way down and everybody gets to have their children play safely and do hopscotch on a lovely sidewalk? So that's the intent here, is that you're contributing to, if not the immediate, but the near future improvement of that street by having a sidewalk. So that's why it's there.
The second point that we want to request a waive is the requirement for the stormwater management report. As this is an existing condition, it's already draining to the Johnson Street. And also we can provide all those calculations that the planner is requesting so we can make sure that it's under the 45%. So we don't go to that hassle being an existing house that is already draining properly into the front of
Stormwater.
Street. Correct.
So again, this is sort of one of these things of measuring the well, does staff have a comment regarding the applicant contesting condition number 5?
Through the chair, to the applicant. So regarding the requirement for the stormwater management report, this is a requirement from the development engineer to confirm that the new lot creation would be adhering to the stormwater drain and drainage accommodations for the new lot created through the consent. So this is again a standard requirement for the lot creation for the consent applications.
So basically, they want some documentation that can actually demonstrate that surface drainage flows are not going onto other properties or even onto the severed property. So this is an idea of an attempt at documenting what's actually happening on the site and confirming that there's no adverse effects on either of the adjacent lots. So there's a comment anyway. I mean, we will consider your request in our motion to remove these, but I'm just providing you with reasons, explanations to why they're there. So your next comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the last one, it would be regarding the number 6, about the servicing and grading for the existing lot. As is pointed there, the above is required when the setback variances involve a building or construction being less than 0.61. As we can compare with the survey, it says 0.62. So that's something that we understand that we have to provide it for the new dwelling, but actually for the existing one, probably we can also be a waive.
I got a feeling that the response is going to be this is a standard requirement. Again, please invite staff to comment on this.
Through the chair, again, on the Dalhousie Avenue, just as adjacent to the new lot created, 177 Dalhousie Avenue. Till there is a sewer connection line, but it's not extended until the end of the street. So we would require for the new lot to be created to have a sewer connection connected to the city main sewer. And that will be at the expense of the applicant.
Okay, again, they're asking you to provide credible evidence on the services connections with the use of an Ontario land surveyor providing the document that allows them to confirm either what is there or what needs to be done to meet the requirements. So I understand that you've picked out the three things that might cost a lot of money to contest. It makes sense, but there's a reason that they're asking for it. So is there, other than our consideration to remove those three conditions, is there anything else you wish to?
Not for my part, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is there anybody in the gallery who wishes to speak this application? Come on down.
Hi, my name's Mark Rainin. I live at 31 Johnson Street, so just across the corner. I also work in the building industry, so I think the intensification of this property is ideal, and obviously it meets the requirements. A couple things as I read through the multiple pages on the property. Item 4, the sidewalk. Like, I've lived on that property for 21 years. So there is no sidewalk from Johnson to Bayview. You can call that there is a sidewalk on a portion of Main Street to Dalhousie. However, there's a vacant property, so it is basically overgrown. The rest of the sidewalk is, what would it be, a meter, maybe? It is the original sidewalk. So $7,000, I think, was the number for that piece of sidewalk. Realistically, you're going to ask people to do that when the sidewalk is never going to be completed on the rest of the street.
So you're here on behalf of the applicant to support the fact that they
Well,
shouldn't
I
have
am
to pay for
now, as I read through all the requirements for that, but I just...
But you understand that there is an attempt to provide a walkable, safe environment in these communities, which
There
is
is a sidewalk on the other side of the street, correct?
Right. And usually we see them on both sides of the street to the benefit of everybody living on each side. Anyway, so that was the rationale given to the applicant.
Yeah,
that you heard.
Yeah, but the sidewalk, let's be honest, it's never going to be completed.
Well, we can't be honest about that because we dream. We have a vision of happy places.
Okay, but let's be realistic. So now we're going to put on, we're trying to build houses in this city. So let's add $7,000 to the client because one day we might build a sidewalk.
Yep, that's exactly what this is about.
Yeah, well, that's asinine.
Great, thank you for your comments. Anybody else wish to speak this application? Okay, any questions from the members of the committee? Then we will, does the applicant really think it's asinine?
I don't think it's asinine. I do understand the intent behind it. We've lived in Port Dalhousie for 30 years, not at this residence, but in 2 others in Port Dalhousie. We love it. We want to protect it too and protect all the children and the families, but most streets only have sidewalks on one side. I know this is a transportation way. I know the bus has been coming down there. We've never, the rest of the sidewalk on Johnston, there's nothing. Passed from all the way down to Bayview, then on Bayview from the next one, there's only 25% of that on sidewalks on one side, and Corbett, there's only sidewalks on one side of it, which is the horseshoe that goes into Port Dalhousie. So I also agree that's a lot of money for a sidewalk that probably won't be used because it's a sidewalk to nowhere, because the next lot doesn't have a sidewalk.
Understood, but the idea of starting somewhere, of continuing
Yes.
an idea.
I do, you asked my opinion, I'm giving you my
Yeah,
opinion.
understood, I asked.
That's my
And
opinion.
it is also, I mean, you're creating a lot to sell a lot to make, no, it's kind of the cost of doing business, one could argue as well. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would any, as a member of the committee, ready to make a motion regarding this?
Following consideration of all written and oral presentations, I move that consent application B 0125 SC and variance application A 0525 as presented in the notice of hearing be approved, subject to all of the conditions outlined in the technical report. As the consent is desirable and compatible with the surrounding area, has no adverse impacts on the surrounding properties, has regard to the provisions of Section 5124 of the Planning Act, conforms with the policies of the city's official plan, and with the conditions fulfilled also complies with the zoning bylaw, maintains the intent and purpose of the provincial planning statement and does not conflict with any applicable provincial plans, and the variance is minor in nature, appropriate and desirable for the use of the land, and is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and bylaw.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Okay, so your application's been approved with respect to the staff report, including the 11 conditions and the grantal of the minor variance. It's a win. Thank you. All right, I think we are at the end. Last application for 949 Merritt. Who was lucky enough to be the last? Come on down. Okay. So we have a declared conflict of interest for one of our committee members, so you have two of us to talk to, which is, yes, we can. If it's 50-50, it gets ugly, but we'll see what happens. All right, thank you, Carrie. This is a minor variance application for 949 Merritt Street. This is for a proposed 4-story mixed-use building consisting of commercial units and 12 residential units. So if the applicant would like to tell us more about what's going on, we'd be happy to hear. And who you are and where you're from.
Hello, Matthew Trindota from Quartec Group. Quartec Group is here in St. Catharines, and I also reside here in St. Catharines. And I'm also an architect from Quartec Group who will be speaking to the file, accompanied by my colleague Zabima, who is a junior planner. We prepared a brief slideshow just to go over the application. We have already submitted for a site plan agreement and received conditional approval, and we're seeking 3 minor variances to on 3 small items that we require to get the approval. So the property is located at 494 Merritt Street. We can move to the next slide. The site plan proposal is for 12 residential units. Each of the residential units is a 2-bedroom suite. And on the main floor, there are 3 commercial suites with parking in the back. So the commercial suites front onto Merritt Street. And there is some landscaping in front of the development, which is included in the development and paid for by the developer. Next slide, please. These are the elevations of the building from the front and from the side. Next slide, please. And 3D perspectives. The perspective on the left side shows the view from Merritt Street of the commercial space and the little parkette at the corner there. And then the rendering on the right side shows how the parking area is tucked in behind the building, out of sight from Merritt Street. And some of the parking stalls are tucked underneath the building to help meet the parking requirements. Next slide, please. We're asking for 3 minor variances. The first minor variances were in regards to, oh, sorry, I'll go off of this list here. The first minor variance is in regards to the density. There was a road widening which took some lands away from the property, so the density, I believe the density used to comply at 12 residential units, and now it's non-compliant because only 11 residential units are permitted. So we're requesting a minor variance to change the density per hectare to get that 12th unit back, which mathematically was subtracted from us due to the smaller lot area after the road widening. And I noticed that staff made a recommendation to amend what we've been asking for. We've been asking for 118 units per hectare, whereas staff, I see, amended it to 119 units per hectare, and that's just from a rounding error, so we do appreciate 119 units per hectare is the correct way forward, and that's what we're requesting.
I don't actually see that in our documentation.
It's on the second page here.
Okay. Oh, in the report, right. Yep, thank you.
The second variance that we're asking for is a reduction in 1 parking stall total. And that's not for the residential suites, that's being subtracted from the commercial suites. We're required to have 1 parking stall per 20 square meters of commercial space. And we're requesting that that be relaxed to 1 parking stall per 22.5 square meters. A big ask.
It's all a numbers game.
So the net is one parking stall that we're asking for to be relaxed. And the third variance that we're asking for is in regards to the minimum required interior side yard, and we're requesting that that be reduced to 1.2 meter, from 1.2 meters down to 1 meter. And on the sketch there, that's facing the other commercial tenants, the adjacent commercial lands on the bottom of the sketch there, and I believe they've built right up to the property line. So
you just couldn't find those 20 centimeters?
Oh, well, so it's a numbers game, and it has to do with the parking. So to get all the required widths between the columns, we couldn't actually.
Right.
With that being said, I'll turn it over to city staff and the Committee of Adjustment if they have any questions.
Great, thanks so much. Do you have any questions? I don't have any questions. Does anybody out there have any questions? Because why would you be here otherwise? Well, you know, you drew the last file. Okay, so name, address, and comments regarding this application with respect to the 3 minor variances being requested.
So Nina Davidson is my name, and I live at 23 Balsam, the property directly behind this one. My main concern is the parking. I see that you've got, it was 15 parking spaces and 1 handicap spot. But with 3 commercial units going in downstairs, where's everybody else going to park? Our neighborhood is completely congested with street parking already as it is.
So you're right, they are here for a 1 parking stall reduction, and they have allocated, specifically that reduction is coming from the requirement for the commercial the commercial parking requirements. So perhaps if there's a clever answer from the applicant as to what other options are for people who might be visiting this building in the future for its commercial offerings, you're welcome to provide an answer. Otherwise, we can hear out the rest of the comments.
Through the chair. I don't know that I have a clever answer. We're only asking for 1 parking stall being reduced. The development's on a major transportation corridor, so there's plenty of busing options. Respectfully, we're not asking for 20 or 30 stalls being reduced. It's 1 parking stall. we're asking to be reduced.
Okay, so I'm sure that that was known, but obviously the point being made is you're concerned about parking, and we'd be happy to entertain, to hear your other comments as well.
Well, I mean, that's my main one as far as, because there's no parking on Merritt, there's no parking on Hartzell, there's no parking on Rockwood. And I'm the property directly behind you, so I'm the closest for the people to start parking all over my property, down the side and everything. Even with where the entryway to the property, to this building going in, they're moving it onto already a congested corner to begin with, to come in and out with kids getting out of school buses trying to go around it. It's a very narrow corner. And now you're gonna have this where they're coming out. I don't know how much I can actually argue right now. I know
Well,
parking is the main, the parking spot was the main, right?
Well, they're here for a minor variance to reduce parking by one stall. That is the focus that for you, and you're sharing your concerns that you think that the proximity of the entrance to this parking stall relative to a busy corner is such that it could create danger for pedestrians. The only comment to that would be that's the reason why this application would be circulated through city staff, because the various departments, which would include traffic and engineering, would make a call like that and probably advise the design to keep that driveway entrance as far away from the corner as possible. Those are valid concerns. So if there's anything else, then we'll invite someone else down to speak to this, but thank you for your contribution. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to this application? Good evening. Who are you and where do you live? No, the big guy you found.
Hi. So my name's Jerry Makala, and I live at 5 Grove Avenue. I've lived there for approximately 5.5 decades. I moved in when I was 8 years old.
Oh, you're not 5.5 decades old?
Nope, 63. So when I was 8 years old, I moved into the premises. The people next door to me at 3 Rockwood had land removed from them in order to make that corner safer.
Yes, this property is also having land removed from them.
Okay, so what I'm concerned with, if you look, is the driveway that comes out onto Grove. At this point,
We'll get that drawing back up for your reference. The site plan. I can't, yes, yeah, and, from their presentation, because it was happy and colorful. Thank you. So this would be something you could refer to if you wanted to.
yeah, so the driveway that comes out onto Grove there, you don't have the other side shown, where the property at 3 Grove is there.
So there's a little inset aerial view there, which I see your point. They're coming, they're converging.
So that road or that corner, because I've lived there for so long, is basically a NASCAR corner. People come off of Rockwood, off of Merritt, and they use that bend like a raceway. People coming out of that driveway or going into that driveway are likely going to get hurt. You're going to find pedestrians hurt on that corner. It's too close to Rockwood to be safe. There is, right at this point, if you look at the picture, an existing driveway that goes out onto Rockwood. I don't understand why that couldn't be used.
Well, there's something we could have the applicant comment on, perhaps. And by the way, what are you trying to say? Kids these days, they don't know how to drive cars? Old men?
No, it's the kids walking I'd be concerned with.
I understand.
And on
I understand.
cycles.
I was picking up on the 63. Could the applicant please comment on perhaps the design decision that led to the configuration of the driveway access, whether or not there were other options reviewed, or what was the parameters that were pointing to this direction?
There were other options reviewed. In fact, we didn't want to realign that road at all. The city had requested that we realign it to make it more safe, and this was what the city requested to make that intersection more safe.
So in working with city staff, this was an agreed upon preferred solution?
That is correct.
As a resident who observes this corner all the time, you might have different 24-hour days, have a day-a-week observation about what safety is, but
Absolutely.
Since you weren't available to consult at the time of the design, the applicant and the city had the city as their best resource. So hopefully the expectations of this improving situation pans out. But so you did point out an issue that obviously was reviewed during the design process, but this is the best they come up with.
Well, I wish they'd come up with something a whole lot better.
Well,
Safety is my concern. I've driven 3.5 years with CAA, or 3.5 decades with CAA, so.
What's it with you in decades? Decades.
I like decades. Decades
All
means
right.
your
I think
experience.
we should still measure our age in weeks, like little babies. Okay, so you're concerned about the driveway access to Grove because there's a pinch point of convergence of roads. And is there anything else that about this application that you have concerns
Just
about?
reiterating Nina's expression on the parking. There's 2 cars. Well, right now, there's a guy from the USA who parks basically in our area. And I've warned him to be careful because the bus or the garbage trucks only on Wednesdays come around that corner, and they've narrowly clipped his car. And there's a lot of times where cars park, and I don't care because I got a driveway, but they park in front of my house and then they park across the street, and it's a lot of times people trying to get through there do it very quickly.
I would suggest one option you have, aside from this application, as a resident who's observing these conditions, is to call the city traffic department, let them know of your, again, eyes, and hopefully there's a response with respect to traffic calming measures and so on. With respect to this application, one can understand that this development working within its property lines is not going to be able to fix an infrastructure problem outside the property lines, but I'm not sure what kind of success people have had calling City Hall to express their concerns, but they are supposed to be responsive, and please give them a call again. Is there anything else you wish to add?
In response to your call City Hall,
Be gentle. Be gentle.
I had a guy doing 80-kilometer-an-hour wheelies down Grove Avenue at about 9 o'clock at night when it was dark. And when I called the police to report him, they said, "Oh, well, why don't you go out there and take care of it yourself?"
Hey, I wasn't doing 80 kilometers an hour, I was only 75.
So I'm just saying, calling doesn't always do.
I understand. I too am a citizen who likes to get the attention of people, but persistence will pay off, I guarantee it. Thanks so much. Anybody else wanting to get their 5 minutes of fame and speak to this application, having waited so long? No? Going once, twice, gone? Great, thanks. Any follow-up comments? No? Great. No? Great. Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Following consideration of all written and oral presentation, I move that variance application A625, as presented in the notice of hearing, be approved as the variance is minor in nature, appropriate, and desirable for the use of the land, and is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay, just making sure we have everything. So we had variance 1, there was a, as per the
Variance 1 as
recommendations
amended.
being reworded. Okay, great. That's covered. Everyone happy with that? Yes, as per technical report. All those in favor? All right. Congratulations, your application has been approved by the 2 remaining members.
Thank you.
Yeah, the reasons were read out. Yeah, he just sings like a canary, that guy. All right, great, thanks so much. Go find something better to do with your evening. Any new business?
Just congratulations to Tom for completing and passing the primer and planning course. Well done.
For those of us who remain, there's a scattered clap of applause. Congratulations. Date of next hearing is March 19th, and may I have somebody make a motion to adjourn this here meeting? Looking around. Oh, Tom is going to do that for us. Great. Thank you all. Bye-bye.